Welcome to another edition of the Broad the Lions UK podcast, episode 116. By all means necessary, the rest is secondary. My name's Matthew Turner alongside Tom and Ryan. How you doing, boys?
Doing good, thanks.
Good, thank you. Good.
All right, we've got a packed show for you today, so I'm not going to screw about with all the usual bits and pieces. We're going to get straight into this. If you can like and sub and all that fun business, let's do it. We're going to leave the news until later on in this podcast because there's a lot to go through and we have prepared a good amount on the DBs. So we're going to get straight into that and then we're going to talk about free agency later. So let's crack on with this secondary class. We're looking at cornerbacks, slot cornerbacks, and safeties, positions of big needs. Hello to everyone in the chat as well. I haven't said that, but Super Simon Lions 154, see one Funky Lions fan, all the rest of you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are starting with Ryan, the safety Lewis Cine out of Georgia, thought to be perhaps a borderline first-round pick. You're up. What have you seen from him?
Yep, Lewis Cine, the free safety from Georgia Bulldogs. He is measured in at an official 6 foot 2 inches and 2 sevenths, at a slender 199 pounds. He tested off the charts incredibly well with a 9.77 RAS score, which is best for 19th at free safety since 1987. He ran a blistering 40 with a 4.37. He did a ridiculously long broad jump at 11 feet and 1 inch, and he's got a really good hand size at 9.37 inches. So very productive 2021 on a very productive secondary, 73 tackles, 9 passes defended and an interception. Now he's the biggest strengths that he brings to his game are the size and physicality. He has got that big 6'2" frame. He's a hard hitter. He's willing to come into the box and play when he needs to against the run. He's great in run support. So he's down to get dirty, even if he wants to play as that, ideally that top free safety. The versatility, because George have asked him to play many roles over the years. He started at slot and nickel corner if they go with no safeties or go with no one high. He's played in a 2-man scheme. He can play the strong, come up into the box, and he can also just put him on an island, let him play side to side as the free safety in a 1 high scheme. So whatever he's been asked to do in the future or in the past, he's always willing to do it. He's someone that plays and has that speed and that IQ to break down players very quickly. And it's not his bread and butter or what he wants to do, but he's great in run support. He comes downhill very quickly. He uses all that 40 speed to diagnose players quickly, come up and run support. And he's a pretty strong tackler. He doesn't look it because he's got that long, slender figure, but he's a good tackler. He's strong when it comes to run support, and he's really good all around. Now, what I've seen is, and what I've read, that his only real weakness is the ball skills. Now, he has a habit of when people get in behind him or when he's going across the side, he doesn't look for the ball. He zeroes in on his man. So there are opportunities there for him to make plays on the ball that sometimes pass by because he doesn't locate it very well when it's traveling deep, or he just decides not to look back and he wants to focus on playing the man, which is fine. He still breaks up multiple passes, but at the next level, you'd like to see him hopefully chip in with some turnovers, and someone will drill that into him, like say, that when he reads his man, it's time to turn around and look for the ball. But easily one of the most complete safeties in the draft, probably the second off the board, and I've got him at ranges. This is an exact between 25 and 40. I think you'll see him off the board there in that range as probably the second or 2A, 2B safety off the board. But with the free agency, I'm not sure how strong will be for a pure free safety, but he gives the versatility as well to play cornerback outside because he's got the size. So he is going to be someone that is going to be a crush for many people.
What have the rest of you guys seen from him?
So from the ball skills are a concern. And like I say, it's more just an ability to turn the ball over, whether it's in any way, shape or form. A guy he actually reminds me a bit of is Tracy Walker, in the good athlete. I like him playing at depth personally, rather than really around the line of scrimmage. He can do it a bit like Tracy Walker can. He obviously struggled a couple of years ago. But I worry about the ability to really impact the game And some of the guys that we talk about, and when I think about safeties that I've kind of really fallen in love with over the last few years, is guys who I think can really impact the game and make people account for them. Even if that doesn't mean they're a perfect prospect, but guys who are going to turn the ball over, guys who are going to make offenses really think about where that guy is. And when you think about the talent that he played with on that team, he's not going to play in a team probably again in his life where he has that amount of a advantage with his 11 versus the opposing 11. Pressure up front, the ball having to come out early, the opposing offense never being able to run against you, so you know they're going to have to put the ball up. They're chasing the game. And the fact he still didn't have that ball production, for me, is a big concern. He's a really nice player. I don't see a kind of game-changing guy there.
I mean, do you think he maybe suffers a little bit because that Georgia defense is so dominant that it's like you almost expected more from him?
He was blessed with a good Georgia side. Like you said, they all made each other look good. They all picked each other up. They were just strong all around. Like I say, is he going to be able to stand out on a team that, let's say, the Lions, let's say if we can't generate pass rush and he does get picked on, if we put him high safety, would he be able to generate turnovers? Would he look as good as he did at Georgia? Potentially not. So it's going to be about the destination for him. He probably wants a bit more of a complete side around him, but that's probably him asking for too much. So he's a project. Like, so he's going to have to grow into a role.
I don't know. I think that's been a tad bit unfair on him there. I mean, Lewis Cine was, when me and Ryan on the college pod, just before the season started, safety was one of the first positions we looked at, and I picked him out the pack then to be one of the, safeties who really shows up this year. And at the time, Georgia were blessed with two really good safeties coming into the year. There was him and there was Tariq Smith, who he was coming in with, who was meant to be the better of the two. He broke his foot before the season started, missed the first 5 games, played 1 game against Auburn, then tore his ACL. Seeing lost his partner there, a very high level guy next to him, and had to take on the leadership role in that room. And nobody threw on Georgia this year. I know, teams can't run on them as much. That front seven's good, but you've still got to protect your secondary. There are a lot of teams who can run defend in college football, but can't defend the pass to save their lives. And he's a big part of that. They don't throw deep on them. And like I say, without his greatest asset there with him, who's injured pretty much all season, he's had a great year. All facets of that Georgia defense have had a great year. You can say it's a great defense, but it takes all parts of them to work together to make that defense great. As much as that front seven stopped the run, he is there to protect the secondary and to protect the back end of the field. And Georgia gave up very, very few points last year because teams couldn't do anything against them. So, I see a young man who's come on very well, who's had a really good season. He's won a natty now, and before this season, he was in like second, third round conversation, probably third round conversation. Now you're looking towards the top of the second, maybe the back end of the first here. That doesn't happen because he's coattailing a good defense. That happens because he's progressed as a player and played really well all year. And like I say, without the star safety on that side, he stepped up and showed up on the way to a national title. So I think he's going to be a really good safety in there. I think someone's going to get something really good with him. And, he's got issues in his game, needs to work out. They all do. They're all coming out of college, but he's going to be a high-level player. And he's got a history of winning, which is crucial going up. That desire to win things, something a lot of players don't have.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I mean, he's quite a buzzy name right now. So I guess that's why I went more negative with it, because I'm comparing him to kind of fringe first-round guys, not third-round guys, where I think he's a really nice player. But like, if you think about, he could go in the 20s, he could go in the low 20s. I mean, Derwin James went with the 17th pick. Safety traditionally is, we talk about many times, is not a high valued position. So for me, is he in that kind of caliber as a prospect? No. Do I think he'll be a really nice player? Yes. I just don't think he's got superstar upside.
I guess the thing is, like, you have a look at the last few years, and Merrick was safety 1 last year, at least on most people's boards, went middle of the second round. Even if we think the safety is more value than that, it's clear that NFL GMs don't agree. So, it maybe is that all of these safeties are going to be overrated in terms of when they're going to get drafted when it comes to the draft.
Yeah, Merrick's actually a really nice comparison as another guy who I thought is a really complete player. And I really liked him a lot, again, as that kind of mid-second round. But he wasn't a super flashy guy. If you compare him to like Richie Grant, turnovers everywhere, Javon Holland, kind of freaky in some of the things he did. Merrick was the kind of safer guy. And that's how I see Cine versus a Dax Hill or someone like that. He's a little bit safer, a little bit more complete. And I think he will be a really good player, but maybe not superstar.
I saw Ant's eyes flick back to the screen when you mentioned his draft crush from last year. You couldn't even hide it for a second, my man. Just Richie Grant, and you're like, who? Where?
Can we not, please?
All right, we'll move on to the next player, who is the safety / cornerback. Well, let's call him DB, Daxton Hill out of Michigan, who is one of mine. Is a guy who, on a lot of the draft guys' boards, is listed as a safety. If you have a look at what he's done in the last few years, a good amount of it, probably just more than 50% of it, has been done from the slot, maybe 40% from single high, and then maybe a handful of snaps outside corner too. Michigan's number 30. He's a junior coming out. He's 21 years old, 6 foot, 192 pounds. He's played 3 years, so 32 games. 149 tackles, 96 of which solo, 7.5 tackles for loss, half a sack. I'll mention this sack later on. Really harsh to call it half a sack when he absolutely buried the quarterback on his own. There we go. 4 interceptions, 15 passes defended, and 3 fumble recoveries. In terms of his combine, he had a really good show, at least in terms of his athleticism. His speed grade was elite, around the 40 and 4.38. He had a 10 split of 1.52, which is wow, lovely. 6.573 cone and a 4.06 short shuttles. Excellent. His explosion, though, not the best. We're looking at maybe the entirely opposite prospect to Kyle Hamilton, who we'll talk about later. Only 33.5 vertical and a 10-foot broad. He's therefore come out with an overall grade 8.93, so he's still a top-tier prospect. Very, very athletic. When it comes down to the tape, though, I had a look at a couple of games. First one was MSU in 2020, which was meant to be his worst game on tape, and again against Wisconsin in 2021, which was meant to be his best game on tape, just to get a flavour of what we could see. And actually, the MSU tape, meant to be the worst game seen by him in his college career, was good. It wasn't bad at all. So really twitchy, eager to get downhill. The guy's like kind of leaning forward all the time, almost raring to go, like in almost like a 3-point stance sometimes when he's kind of like trying to rare to go. Really quick feet. Even when he's backpedaling, he's kind of like, I don't know what it is, just like he looks like it's been drilled into him that the ball's going to come to him at any single moment. He has to be alert to that. His tackling is fantastic in the open field. He misses the odd one here or there, as does everyone in a secondary, especially given some of these guys at wide receiver and running back these days. But his technique's excellent, explodes into tackles in the open field as well, with guys juking and spinning everywhere. He wraps up. There's no bad technique there. He has a habit, and I'm sure this is just Michigan's scheme, but I think that it's going to aid him when it comes to translating into the NFL. He's moving a lot between slot cornerback and safety in terms of pressure. Even when there isn't movement behind the line of the offense, he's coming forward, going back, which, kind of showing misdirection here and there. So he's going to be someone who's going to have a bit more intelligence to then some of the other guys who are playing this position, because he has to be smart enough to think about what he's doing. He's directing some of the traffic on the defensive side, making sure that if he's moving, then other pieces are moving in line with him. In goal line coverage, because he's a really good tackler, and, the guy's small, right? He's undersized as a safety, but is very, very physical and kind of belies the fact that he is that small. In goal line defense, he's fantastic. Comes forward with ferocity against some of these bigger running backs and stops them in their tracks. In terms of coverage, he matches people stride for stride in man. You're not going to get to see him getting beat over the top. One thing that I have seen that he can work on is that sometimes he can overcommit to when a wide receiver makes a double move. He can struggle to recover from that. So I've seen his ankles broken on a couple of occasions. But even against some bigger guys, he can match up against tight ends. I saw him make a couple of hits on some really big-bodied guys, and maybe he's not necessarily forcing incompletions with these because these are really big guys, but he's laying down the hit, doing everything he absolutely can to stop those completions happening when there are clear mismatches against him. He's a chess piece. He lines up all over the field. I mentioned that he kind of took a few snaps at outside corner. I actually think he could do that more, even though he's only 6 foot. I think he's got the skills, ball skills, as well as speed to play as an outside cornerback. So he could play outside, he could play nickel, and I actually do think either safety spot is going to suit him well because he's played single high, but he also does come down as a strong safety too. He's one of the most complete safety prospects I've seen in some years, ignoring perhaps one name that we might mention later. He's a guy that I've seen mocked all over the place. I've seen him go as high as 15 in some mock drafts. I've also seen him drop to the middle of the second round. So there's a wide range of outcomes for Daxton Hill. I'm sure there's going to be a load of hate from Michigan fans who are convinced this guy's a slot cornerback. What have you guys seen from Daxton Hill on tape?
I've seen some of his games this year, and I agree that I think he's going to be really good defending motions, like pre-snap movements, motioning guys in and out, the jet sweep, because he's always kind of buzzing around the line. He's good at going through traffic, so he can pass in between the backers and not get caught up in taking bad angles or bumping into people. So if someone likes to diagnose or play quickly, for me, I'd probably keep him at strong safety. I wouldn't play him at free safety because I don't think he's got those elite ball skills that you look for. But tackling wise, he does play bigger than his build is. Like I say, he's good at line of scrimmage. He's strong. Let's say he can come up and he can shadow tight end if needs be, pass him off in his own scheme if he wants to track him across the field, if he plays that nickel corner. So I think he's someone that, again, is versatile. He's played a multitude of schemes. I don't think 15 to 20 is probably a bit rich for my liking. Like I say, but if you went at the first end of the first, start of the second, I think that's where you're gonna probably get all the safeties we're listing today. I think there's going to be a domino effect where you take one of these guys and they'll all fly off the board. So, but no, he's had some really good moments this year, and he's been crucial to that defense that made a really good run. So I like what I see, and I've seen a lot of mocks. I don't know if that's a bit of bias or if people truly believe that he's worth the 32nd pick, but I think he'd make a strong addition for a team like Detroit that we need a strong safety. Like I said, that is the position for me that is weak. We need someone to play that because we know Tracy doesn't want to.
I'll be honest, Hill's the guy I've probably seen the least of, and that's unfair because when we were kind of watching along with the combine, I was laying into him a little bit, and I haven't even seen what he does particularly well. But he's got a lot of fans. He's clearly a great athlete. I guess my question to you, Matt, would be, what do you think he does at a really kind of elite level? And I don't know the answer because I haven't watched enough of him. But what do you think is really going to translate?
I mean, it's tough, isn't it? Because if a DB is doing his job well, you often don't see him. And so I think it was one of those moments where, like, he makes a slight step and, a wide receiver is kind of bursting past him a bit. His recovery is fantastic. So you're not beating him over the top even when he makes a mistake. And that's going to help him because he's very eager to come downhill, as I said. So I would say recovery, which maybe is not the best because you don't want him to make a mistake. But I'm not sure that he does anything particularly to a kind of super elite level. I don't really see too many weaknesses in his game. That's the biggest thing I can say is that I don't really know much where he can improve personally. Like, it's just a little bit everywhere, but nothing glaring, which is quite nice, really. He's a very well-rounded prospect. And
I mean, yeah, he's a good player, as you've said. All facets of his game he seems to be decent with. Obviously, they've had a really good year on the Wolverines defense there, but I mean, I prefer Jaquan Brisker when it comes to the end of there. I think he's just a little bit better. The big thing with Daxton Hill, it's his size and his strength. leave him at a disadvantage. When it comes up to coming up against bigger receivers, big tight ends, there's going to be mismatches there because he doesn't have the size and the strength always to compete. And especially coming up to the NFL level, you know, he's going to be coming up against some really big guys, some really bad mismatches here. And I do worry about, you know, how that effect is going to have on him when it translates to the NFL level. And I'm wary about Michigan players this year just because there's a lot of Michigan bias around. The team did really well this year, but I think the players are getting hyped up a little bit more than they should be. Like I say, I think there's a clear hierarchy this year. Kyle Hamilton is by far and away, you know, the best safety in the draft this year. Jaquan Brisker is on, you know, he's at an elite level there on his own. And then there's the guys just under that where Dax Hill is. You know, but it's his versatility is probably going to be his biggest calling card, though. Like you say, plays at safety, can play in the slot. Teams will like that. So that, you know, I think he will go high because of the versatility. But there are a few issues there where I'd be like, is he going to give me what a Jaquan Brisker does? I don't think so, but we'll see with him. But he's a really tidy player. He's going to get drafted high, and good for him.
And speaking of Jaquan Brisker, right, one of yours, he's the one moving on to next at Penn State. Ant prefers him. What did you see from Brisker?
I like Penn State, so I'd already seen a lot of him this year. I'm going to nickname him Jaquan Bang Bang Brisker because that's how this guy plays. Like I said, this guy, strong safety, measured in at 6'1" and a third inch, 199 pounds, but don't let that fool you, because he plays bigger than that. He got a 9.11 RAS score, 69th out of the strong safety since 1987, so he ranked well. 22 bench reps, really good for a safety. He's got a nice, strong forearm there. Ran a very respectable 4.49.40 and a nice 10.04 broad jump. This year came in with 63 tackles, 5 passes defended and 2 interceptions, and was one of the leaders of a shaky Penn State defense, let me put it that way. Now, Brisker for me is the second best safety in the class. Like I say, he can also play a bit of that. You play him as maybe a weak backer. He is a hybrid. He is the strong safety. He is incredibly aggressive. Like I say, he buzzes around that box, around the line of scrimmage. He diagnoses the run plays very quickly, and then he bolts down. Like I say, he uses his helmet as a weapon sometimes. So there are players there, but he takes incredibly good angles. He's got a great engine. I've seen him play side to side. Like I say, very much a bit like Hamilton-esque. He can cover ground quickly, moving laterally, horizontally, or vertically. So he uses all of that 449. Like I say, he's got a good frame. He's someone people look to as well. Like I say, you will hear him in vocal on the pitch. He isn't someone that will just get told what to do, or he will see things, he will shout it, he will call it out there. He is someone that I think would flourish in, like I say, let a free safety take the field behind him, let him do what he does best in between, coming up to line of scrimmage, but can drop back in coverage as well. I've seen him play against some of the smaller tight ends. He's more than willing to come up and jam them at line of scrimmage, but travel with them really well. And he is incredibly physical. Like I say, he's picked up the odd injury in the last 2 years. Like I say, some of them, I could almost say 1 or 2 self-inflicted. Like I say, sometimes a bit like our own Tracy Walker. Some of the tackles are a bit reckless. He wants to just stop the player dead, doesn't always rip the ball out, but that can be worked on. That's just a bit of discipline there. Overall weakness for me, what I'd say is actually the aggression as well. Sometimes he's a bit of an eager beaver. Sometimes he will lock onto a player, or he will just bite on what he thinks he sees. He'll take the odd bad angle. He will miss the odd tackle in the open field because he has come up to line too quickly, or he's gone too fast and not broken down and got into a proper tackle stance there. And the next level, you can probably expect him to pick up a penalty or two. Like I say, I think sometimes you will see the odd flash or lack of discipline. Like I say, we're not accustomed to ourselves, like I say, and I don't want to say you'd get a target and call at the next level, but he will lower his helmet. He will initiate contact to protect himself or drop the hammer if needs be. He is a strong, physical, strong safety, but I love him. I've got him going in the 20 to 35 range. I think he could very well be the second straight off the board. He's going to fall very nicely into Detroit's range. end of the first, start of the second. If you want the 5th-year option on him, I'd say take it. I'd say take him 2 rounds early. And I've loved everything I've seen from him. Like I say, when he's injury-free and when he's not got stingers or on the field, he's a born leader and he's a hammer in that defense against run-heavy sides. He will flourish playing against up the line of scrimmage.
What about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, I love Jaquan Brisker. He's, like I said earlier, he's Hamilton light. He does everything that Kyle Hamilton can do, just not to the same all elite level that Hamilton does it, but to a very, still probably an elite level, I'd say. Penn State, they have a wonderful defense there. They churn out NFL standard players year by year. You just got to look back to Micah Parsons last year, who's come and taken this league by storm. They produce players who are ready to make an impact on day one and can possibly win your games as well. And this is potentially what this guy can do as well. It takes a lot to stand out there to come to the cream of the crop at the top. At Penn State, you have got to be bloody good, and he is. And I'm with Rye. If we miss out on Hamilton at 2 for whatever reason, then he's the next name up on the list, and there's no one else there. Not until he's gone, then you start looking at some of these other guys. But he's an incredible player, and I think he's going to be great at the NFL level. And we will be very lucky to get him if we, as I say, we didn't acquire Hamilton at the top of the draft.
So when I was watching him, the guy who came to mind, and this is almost unfair on him, but it was almost like if you watch Jamal Adams play and you were just like, I wish if Jamal Adams was just like 15 pounds lighter, so he was a bit more explosive, moved a bit better, could cover a bit better. That's the kind of guy I see. Not that I'm saying he should be taken 6 overall or whatever Jamal Adams went, but he's just got a nose for the football, and he's better for me in coverage than someone like Jamal Adams, who's really treated more like a dime linebacker. But he can go find the football. He can be physical. The fact he weighed in at 199 pounds completely blew my mind because he plays like he's 215. He's the guy that for me, again, non-Kyle Hamilton division, this is the guy that I like out of that kind of next tier of safeties, and I would be very happy to have him on the Lions moving forward.
I actually haven't watched a huge amount of Brisker, so I have to defer to you guys here. It sounds that there is some sort of consensus brewing here with Hamilton, I presume, at the top, with Brisker kind of like slightly into second here over the rest of these guys. Would that be fair?
Yeah, for me anyhow.
Yeah, and like I say, I haven't watched enough of Daxton to really put him in the mix. But yeah, I would definitely have him over Cine.
I think the thing that separates Brisker from Dax is his build. I think he's just, the build's there for him. He's got all the physical tools he needs to truly dominate at the next level. I'm not saying Dax can't, but that's going to be something he has to overcome because he's got neither the size nor the strength really that you'd want there. Like I say, especially when you're coming up against some of these mismatch guys. And that's what separates Brisker to the second safety for me. So, yeah, there is that little bit of a hierarchy, but there's some potentially really good guys down there. So everyone has their own niches and flaws, let's say.
The one thing on Brisker, just because it's been a bit of a love fest, he is definitely a bit tighter in the hips. He's a bit more of a traditional safety. Like, again, Kyle Hamilton kind of parked. But if you compare him to what you see of like a Cine or even Dax Hill, who's obviously played more slot corner, he moves a bit more like a safety. He's obviously an incredible athlete, but he is just a little bit more tight in the hips. You're not going to get that same level of fluidity. But then again, you're not really expecting that from safeties to the same degree. So it's just not a massive deal for me.
All right, let's move it on to our next guy. And you are up with cornerback Tariq Woolen from UTSA. You are Mr. UTSA. So let's find out what's going on with Tariq.
Not Mr. UTSA per se, but every year you have a team that you sort of fall in love with and you love to watch. And UTSA were the team this year. They play in the CUSA, Conference USA in college football. Not one of the best leagues in the world ever, but in between all the sort of the small teams down there, some of the bad play you can get. One team rose to prominence this year, and that was them. And on this certain team, there were a few players who started rising to prominence as well. You may have heard of Sincere McCormack, the running back on there, the left tackle Spencer Burford, who I've banged the drum for constantly as a development tackle. And then you've got Tariq Woolen, the cornerback, who was set literally the combine on fire. And these preseason sort of trials in the games, he's really come to prominence. He was one of my best kept secrets down in college football after the season ended, because still not many people had heard of him. But, you know, this guy has come out and absolutely just sort of destroyed everything in his path at the combine. Oh God, what did he do now? It was crazy. He ran a 4:34 40-yard dash. He had an 11'5" broad jump, and just to put it in perspective, they are eye-watering numbers. You know, this guy's physicality and his athleticism has just absolutely come through here. So in terms of the type of player he is, he's an outside corner. That's where you're going to be playing him at the NFL level. And his skill level currently, so Tariq Woolen sort of skirts the boundary of where you have sort of bona fide talent who is already going up and development talent. He's sort of right in the middle there. If you're not going to go out and get a first string corner with a first round pick, you know, one of the guys who's really done well, who's really sort of balled out at college level, but you want a guy who you're going to develop who has a really high ceiling, he's right in the middle. And he's one of the first guys you want to be looking at if you don't go for a corner, say in the first round. He certainly is mine, simply because he has the athleticism and, you know, the physical traits. They are really rare. He's been at UTSA for 5 years. He spent 3 years as a wide receiver to start off before transitioning to corner. He's only played 2 years at corner, but what that does, because a lot of players do this at the college level, they change positions, but he has the mindset of a wide receiver. He knows what a wide receiver is going to do. He can recognize the routes, he can diagnose the plays, and he brings the athleticism of a wide receiver to the cornerback spot. So, you know, it's been great to see. UTSA are a school who've only produced 2 players in the NFL draft ever. This is not a school that is known for producing NFL talent. So really, to come to the attention of national scouts is a really, really big deal for them. So like I said, he's only been there 2 years, but he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism to give him a really high ceiling in the NFL. You're probably going to be looking at him. He's got the makings of a sort of dynamic zone corner. He'll make plays on the ball. He can tackle really well. He can play in press coverage. He's shown a willingness to sort of get up there, really up personal with the guys. He's really tough. Will get into it with wide receivers, won't let them bully him in a strength term there. The only sort of really thing he's got to work on with his game, and which is why he is a development project, he does have to develop some of his techniques and his fundamentals. And, you know, I hate to say that word, but it's his coverage instincts are lacking a little bit. There are some things he needs to work on, but this is a guy who, if you're going to, you know, take a chance on him, you're probably going to get him in the second round. Might seem a little much, but the guy's ceiling's just absolutely huge. He's come from a small school side. He's shown out. You've seen him at the combine. You've seen him at the Senior Bowl as well. He played really well in the Senior Bowl game. Had a few little trip ups in practice, but they all do there. So year one, you're going to get a development corner out of him, but after that, you're going to get an impact starter who's going to make plays and is going to make your secondary a lot better. I'm all up for getting him if he's there, maybe a bit later on in the second, I don't know. But, you know, I just really like this guy. I like where he's come from. I like the development he's made. He's had a really good year. He's shown out when he needs to in the postseason trials, and he's going to have his pro day. But yeah, he's going to go high in the draft, and I really want us to get him. We need an outside corner, potentially, so let's go for it.
Just want to thank Derek Bobarak on Twitch for his subscription with Prime. That was absolutely free for him, but just puts a little bit of money from Amazon's pocket to us. His second month in a row. Thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate you. And if you are on Twitch, if you do subscribe to Amazon Prime, you also have a free one that you can dole out to anyone you like. I know that Pride of Detroit are big on there too, but if you can do that, that would be great. Thank you very much. The rest of you guys, Tariq Woolen, I know he comes from a little bit of a lower conference. Have you guys seen anything from him?
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of him. Like I say, I liked UTSA this year. They went on a really good run. I think Tariq Woolen is this year's Robert Rochelle from last year. that smaller kid from Central Arkansas that had these incredible athletic tools and he had the high IQ. And like I said, I think someone took a punt on him. So I think someone in the middle rounds could get a true gem here. Like I say, he's incredibly athletic. Like I say, he's got this big, long, slender frame. He's got those lovely strides where he covers ground very quickly. So he's able to recover. If anyone is able to get behind him, closes ground very quickly. He is he's a bit, like I said, there's a rawness to him, but like I say, I think he's got the skills to play on the outside. I think he can hold his own against some of the bigger, better names at the next level. He's going to take a little bit of development, but he's got everything you need. The tools are there. He's got a good IQ. He's got nice hips. He flips turns very well for someone that's quite tall. You'd expect he could be a bit slow when he runs a bit upright, but very rangy. Like I say, he's got those nice, the long arms, the length. So everything is there to work with. It's just the right person getting what you want out of him. So I think it's impossible to predict where he'll go. Someone's going to love him more than others. So I think someone could get a really good surprise out of this kid. And I've really enjoyed watching him this year. And playing both ways does help, like I say, because he'll offer stuff on special teams. Like I say, if you ever get an injury and you have to put him on at wide receiver, there are so many things you could do with this kid if you need be. Just ask him. He'll be very easy to teach because he'll be a good listener.
I mean, he's very toolsy, isn't he? When I found out he used to play wide receiver, it kind of blew my mind a bit. It is almost like they just looked at him and said, yeah, you can play wide receiver, because it doesn't really show up on tape in terms of how he tracks the ball, how he gets his head round for the ball, etc. So I don't see that necessarily as much. I mean, he reminds me of Iffy from last year, raw guy. Obviously, his athletic upside is all world, but similar kind of guy, long, moves really nicely, but raw. And it's all about how you feel about the person, because obviously all the athletic upside is there. And this is where the Lions and Jets have a huge advantage over the others, because they got to actually work with him, see how he handles meetings, see how he takes coaching, which is why if we do end up drafting him, I will be pumped, because then that's just such a clear statement that the coaching staff feel good about someone who's clearly, his hype is through the roof right now and other teams will be interested. And they went and got him because they think he's going to be able to learn and develop with their coaching staff, with his personality. So I like him as an upside guy. I probably would have other guys over him because we had Iffy last year in that similar kind of mold. But yeah, if you end up getting him in the third or something like that, I don't think you're upset.
It's really weird, the kind of range of outcomes for this guy, isn't it? Because there's so many really good cornerbacks in this stable, like kind of first, second round guys you might be able to count 6 or 7, and Woolen's not potentially in that group, or at least wasn't. And now suddenly, is he breaking into that group? People are still mocking him between the 3rd and 5th round because they don't know what Ant has seen. And, second perhaps doesn't appear like it's out of the realm of possibility. But I do I am holding out a hope that he does fall a little bit just because of concerns about the level of opposition that he's faced. But with that speed, with the tools that he has, the upside is massive, but it feels like our entire cornerback room is filled with upside and no one that can do it or be trusted to do it year in, year out. And I guess with cornerback, no one does it year in, year out, apart from a couple of guys at the very, very top. And this is why we're going to come on to him, but this is why Derek Stingley is still regarded as one of the top prospects out there. It's not about your year-to-year production. It's about showing that you're capable of high-end production at some point, isn't it? Oh. So that's why the toolsy guys are always going to do well at cornerback, because that shows that you're able to pull off some of this high-end stuff.
And we still need a true outside guy at the minute. The job is up for grabs. And this is what this guy's going to be. You're right there. If you were to rank the cornerbacks now, because he's not particularly high, there are probably 6, 7, maybe 8 guys. If you're ranking them as starters in the NFL now, who are probably above him in what they could give you straight away. However, his ceiling's probably higher than most of them. They might go on to be very good NFL players, but this guy could go on to be a really special NFL player if you develop him correctly. And what better team at a place where the top 2 guys on defense are former DBs themselves. I think it'd be crazy if you've got Iffy, Tariq, you know, Jeff's coming back, Parker, Jerry. God, you're going to be spoilt for choice there, especially if we've got them for a year. So hopefully he does slide. But I think the trouble is the combine sort of shone a big light on him now, and teams are going to look past his CUSA upbringing there. One, because he's changed position. Two, you know, they knocked off some good teams this year. They knocked off Illinois, who are a Big Ten team. They beat Bailey Zappa and Western Kentucky twice. They don't mugs this team are.
All right, let's move this on to the next one. We're at number 5 of 10. We're going to Tom for his first. Cornerback Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. What have you seen from him?
Right, so Andrew Booth, 6 foot 194 unofficial because he didn't compete at the combine. So he had a quad injury leading up to it. And so didn't run a 40, didn't do any of the athletic testing, didn't run the drills, which is a shame. 2021 stats, he had 3 picks, 5 passes, defended, PFF grade of 78.7. So the quick summaries, physical, versatile cover guy, mixed up in the run game. Did also used to play a bit of receiver as well, and that does come through more so than for me, someone like Tariq Woolen. But he's a bit of a forgotten man in this draft cycle. I think partly because he wasn't at the combine, but there's been a lot of talk about Stingley falling, Sauce Gardner rising, Woolen's crazy athleticism, short arms on McCreary, and who's the guy out of, is it McDuffie out of Washington? So there's been a lot of guys talked about. I haven't heard a single thing out of Booth this entire offseason. So what he does well, he looks good in a variety of different techniques. So whether he's running press bail, off coverage, I think he looks really nice in all of them. He does like to get his hands on receivers. So even though he's not a prototype in terms of size, and I don't know if we've got official measurements or not for him, I would guess he's more 5'11" than 6 foot, just because they normally are a little smaller than their listed measurements. But he's a physical guy, he plays bigger on his size, and he's got a really feisty attitude, which I think will definitely appeal to the Lions. He's got very much top-end ball skills, so I think he actually looks at his best when the ball is in the air, which is rare for corners, normally when they look most shaky, to be honest. He had a beautiful one-handed pick versus Virginia in 2020 where he gets his head around nice and early, is locked onto that ball the whole time, and one-hands it for the interception. No fear versus the run, like I say, really likes to mix it up. That comes with downsides we'll get to, but he really puts his head in the fire. Quick feet, there's a few full steps in there, but he's got really nice quick feet. Aggressive and working up to ball carriers as well, so engaging people at different points. Like I say, he's physical for a sub 200 pounder. He plays a lot bigger than his size, and he does have nice length. So while he may not be tall, he definitely doesn't have a problem with arm length versus some of those other guys. Final thing, he stays nice and low in his pedal and his stance. You don't want guys to pop up out of their stance early and lose height. It just helps with their change direction. In terms of a few weaknesses, so he's a bit out of control at times versus the run. He's so aggressive. We kind of talked it a bit earlier with some of the safeties, but he's very much kind of heat-seeking missile, goes low through people's knees and shins often, and he has hurt himself doing so as well. So that's something more just to keep in mind. He doesn't really look in control. So he's not like a super smooth guy, especially when he's in zone. He's quite fidgety, active, rather than you see some of the really good guys are much smoother in how they operate. He's a little late on breaks occasionally in front of him sometimes, but I'm not too worried about it. But he is too willing to pass off guys when he's in zone. So especially if he's in cover 2, he knows he's got safety help. He'll just pass guys off and keep his eyes on the QB, which isn't really kind of how you want to do it. You want to either disrupt the route, get some depth if there's no one in front of you, rather than just passing him off and kind of covering grass for the sake of it. He's more of a man coverage guy, I would say. I don't think he's got the most fluid hips. He's a little tight at times. I would have liked to see the combine drills to work in some of that, but he's not bad in that side. And whilst he stays low in his pedal, he does pop out of his brakes. So it's one thing to stay low when you're pedaling backwards. If you jump straight up, you're basically just losing energy, losing momentum instead of kind of flowing out. So I would have liked to see him test long speed at the combine would be my final thing. There's just a couple bits on tape which make you think, does he have that really kind of top end long speed? Is he a 4.4 guy or a kind of low 4.5 guy? It's what I would have liked to have seen. So final thoughts, guy he could be in play at 32, 34 for the Lions. He could also be off the board at 15. It's a little bit of an unknown. I think the brand of football he plays will really appeal to the Lions. And I do think he has the chance to be a top level starter. Looking at player comparisons, one really resonated with me was Janoris Jenkins. So he's actually a bit bigger than Janoris Jenkins, but that kind of really feisty demeanor, man coverage guy, kind of going to get up in your face about it. So I wouldn't hate it at 32, 34 if you fell. It's unlikely he'd be kind of top of my personal board at that time, but he's a talented guy who I think will be a really nice player.
How about the rest of you guys? Andrew Booth.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Clemson. Like I say, Clemson was so funny this year. It's like the offense absolutely stunk, but the defense was elite. It kept them in so many games this year. They clamped down many offenses, and he was one of the reasons why the thing that stood out to me is, I agree with you, it's sometimes the sloppiness, recklessness of the tackles. He's not someone that breaks down quickly. He doesn't slow his feet to a halt. Like you say, he just goes in all guns blazing. And I have seen guys bounce off of him because of that. Like I say, he wasn't always able to secure the tackle. And the willingness to also, I know you said, I don't want to say bail on routes or bail on people, but to just assume that the receiver is clear of him and just wave him away, just give him off, and then just, like I say, eyes back in the backfield. Like I say, sometimes looks like he's doing nothing. Like I say, guarding that open ground where there's no one there. So you'd like to see him be a bit more of a factor, even if he knows the ball's not coming his way. Like I say, give the receiver a bit of a jip, or like I say, try put them off a little bit. Sometimes he was a bit too relaxed. But no, I agree. He plays with that good size. There's a good physicality and like I said, there's aggressiveness there. Like I say, he was one of those really important guys on the outside for the Tigers this year in a pretty damn good defense, to say how well they struggled. So he's someone I think that you could possibly take a look at towards the end of the first. If he's still there at the start of the second, I think someone will probably snap him up there because there's something to work with.
Yeah, Ryan summed that up pretty well there. I mean, the Clemson defense were amazing this year in the circumstances they got done. Their offense couldn't stay on the field for 2 minutes for a lot of this season, and they were frequently having to, keep teams to below 20 points a game, which they did not many. I think only once where they had 25 points or more scored on them this year. It was literally, they didn't give anything away, and Booth was part of that. Obviously part of the Natty winning season the year before as well. So, I mean, this guy is a high caliber guy. When you come through the ranks at Clemson again, you have to be really good to get into that team. You have to be great to get in that defense, and he is. And for me, as I was saying with Tariq Woolen, he's sort of in the area where I'm going to start looking at going for a cornerback. For me, Booth's just too high. He's going to go to a team. He's going to be a really good player for them. I think he's going to be a decent starter for them at this point already. And I think, just in terms of us, the Lions, it's a bit too rich for us in this draft. But the player himself, he's really good. And, I look forward to seeing him in the league because, again, the sort of the Clemson defense we've watched a lot of this year. And it has been good to see as bad as their offense has been. So, yeah, hopefully some team gets him well, but we won't. I would not say so. I don't think we're going to go corner that high.
No, I mean, I anticipate he's going to go top half of the first. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be like 12 overall or something like that. There's something about him that I just intrinsically like. It's always said of pretty much every position, you'd like someone who's too aggressive and you can kind of tone that down rather than trying to tone up someone who's kind of not keen to be aggressive, and the guy is just a missile, isn't he? He goes into everything at 110%, and maybe that does create problems for the defense, but more often than not, he's creating that tackle for a loss, or his anticipation's fantastic. So I do think that he's perhaps going in as slightly more of the complete cornerbacks in this group. So I think that really helps him. Apart from his aggression, there's not too much of a change about his game. Like, he just puts a smile on my face when I'm watching him play, which is really, really nice to see. Any more comments on Booth? All right. We will move it on to Ant's second one of the day in cornerback Kaiir Elam from Florida.
Yeah, thanks for this one. I didn't get a choice. This is one of the few guys in this corner class who I've not really had a chance to look at this year. The thing with this corner class is it's deep pretty much as anything. There's maybe not with the elite guys in there that we've had in previous years, but there's just like this whole middle group who are potentially going to be great. And it's huge. There's like 10, 15 guys in there. But I mean, Kaiir Elam, he comes from a family with pedigree. He's 6'2", 196 pounds, plays for the Florida Gators in the SEC. The SEC, one of the toughest divisions in college football. He's going up, I mean, against the creme de la creme of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers. This guy is playing against the best of them. So his dad was actually a first round pick in the NFL. Matt Elam, he played for the Baltimore Ravens, played college at Notre Dame, but he was a first round pick there. So the guy has history. I know at the start of this season, he was talked about in the same circles as Derek Stingley and Ahmad Gardner. That's how much, people were high on him this year. Gators have had a really bad year. They're not really much to say apart from, they've been awful. A lot was expected of them. They had a really good running game to start out the year, but they faded badly. But I mean, in terms of Kaiir Elam, he's had a decent career down. He's been 3 years there, 78 tackles total, 2.5 for a loss. He's got 5 interceptions, 20 passes defended. He's got a fumble recovery in there. So this isn't a guy who you're bringing up a lot to go after the quarterback, get at the running back in that game. He's a guy that you're keeping in coverage and, he's really damn good at his job. And like I say, the level of opposition that he is coming up against is huge. If you're projecting sort of his fit at the next level, given this guy's length, his athleticism, his physicality, you're going to want him to play for a team who's playing in zone and press coverage. That's really where his skills are. He's got the eye discipline. He's got the ball skills. He's got the athleticism, as I say, to be able to get up there. But the one big problem he does have is his run support. Obviously, especially for the Lions, the run game, sort of getting that wrapped up is huge for us. And that's one place where the Gators have struggled. They run the ball well, but they also have the ball run on them quite a lot there as well. He struggles to wrap up against ball carriers, to get the tackling in there right, to bring the running backs down. And I mean, again, he's going up against some of the best guys in the business. These are tough guys to bring down there. But I mean, he does have, again, the athleticism. He ran a 4.39 at the combine. He's got no shortage of speed. He's got no shortage of strength. It's just some of these sort of technical aspects of his game he needs to work out. And if you can iron them out properly, then you're going to get a good quality NFL starter out of him here. I think, like Tariq Woolen, you're probably looking to years 2 and 3 where you're really going to see the upside of them here. But I mean, you'll be able to start with you to begin with. If you're bringing him in obvious passing situations, he will be able to offer you a lot there. So again, this is a guy who's probably looking, as with a lot of these guys, as we've said, I've seen some people take him at the end of the first, pick 32, seeing him not so far after that there. And like I say, some team's going to take a chance on him, but the run defense is a little bit of an issue, especially for us. I wouldn't be taking him high. There are other corners I would rather take here, but again, this is a guy you're drafting for years 2 and 3. He sorts that run work out, then he's going to be a great player at this level. Like I say, he's got the family history there. He knows the pressure. He's played against some of the best players in college football. So, this is a guy who's got a really high ceiling as well, but just not my take for the Lions.
How about the rest of you guys? Kaiir Elam.
I've not seen too much, to be honest. There's not a lot that I can add to that, fortunately.
He's very grabby. From what I have seen, and it frustrates me when guys who are elite athletes are then grabby running down the field, because especially at college, you're outrunning these guys comfortably. So why do you need to be so overly physical? My biggest issue, and this is something which I didn't know about him, I was actually listening to the Athletic podcast the other day with Chris Burke and Nick Baumgartner, and they were talking about how he basically switched off from the team this year. So his effort just went and he basically shut it down and kind of gave up on the team, which doesn't sound very Lions-like, I would say. So based on that, it sounds like interviews will be a big deal for him. Guy who's talented enough to go in the first round could go in the third round or later if teams don't feel like they can buy into what he's about. So Yeah, I'm always nervous if there's any rumors of people, and especially kind of corners, to be honest, guys switching off and switching out, because you are slightly further away from the ball, so you can get away with it, but it's just not what I want to be dealing with on a team, guys who can switch off when things go against them.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very Lions-like at all. I mean, there's a reason this guy has dropped. He was being mocked in the top 10 4 months ago, and suddenly he's very firmly in the first 10 of the second round at the moment, and he's actually potentially falling further. So I think there's some value to be had with him potentially, because if you can pick him up middle of the second, I think the skills are there, but if that's his attitude, I'm not so sure. That's really worrying. I hadn't heard that, but thank you, man. I don't know what to say. That completely just... I was going to say that this is a guy who's kind of consistently performed all the way through his college career, that, you know, at least looking at him statistically, it's not like he's broken out in his junior year after 2 years of mediocrity. The guy's been good throughout, but turning it off in your final year because Florida were not the best is not what you want to see, because let's face it, Lions next year may not be good, and we need guys who are going to buy in. This is not one for me.
I mean, you have to take the situation into circumstance. So, like I say, Florida are they're a medium fish in a very big pool in that division. You're coming up against the creme de la creme, so the stats maybe are not always going to be there. You know, the attitude thing is an issue, but I mean, hell, the Lions are giving Allen Robinson serious consideration this year, and he quit on the Bears last year. So, you know, if he can get a look in, why can't Kaiir? But, you know, you have to take it. It's like Tariq Woolen. He's played in the CUSA all his time. So, you know, Kaiir Elam's gone against the best. And, you know, that has an impact when you go up to the next level. The level of opposition doesn't go up as much for you. But I do agree that there are issues there with his personality as well. But I wouldn't write him off for the lack of production. That's just simply because of the division he plays in.
Yeah. Florida Gators corners do not have a good hit rate either. Is an interesting one in terms of, like I say, I'm not one to scout the helmet, but if you're playing that game, it's not a great look. I mean, obviously, tees we had here, but issues with CJ Henderson, what's he called? Quincy Wilson got a lot of buzz coming out, didn't really do anything. So yeah, they just haven't really translated.
All right, we'll move on to our next player, number 7, in fact, I can't count. Trent McDuffie and Washington mentioned earlier. Ryan, one for you. What did he see from Trent?
I wish I didn't pick him. The more I've seen from him, the more I dislike him. So Trent McDuffie, cornerback from Washington, 5'11", 193 pounds, so very undersized for an outside cornerback. Didn't do much at the combine, so opted out of things. He's been carrying out injury. Ran a 4.44, which is pretty good. Limited production, only 35 tackles and 4 tackles for loss this year. So, like I said, I'll start with the good stuff first. The good stuff is he excels in man coverage. Like I say, he plays sticky. Like I say, he's got good hands. He uses his hips incredibly well. This is probably the most fluid of all the cornerbacks we're naming today. He stops, he starts, he changes direction, he flips his hips like butter. You wouldn't believe it's not butter watching him. Like I say, he's a very smooth guy. So he changes well, he mirrors very well. People break in, break out. He's able to read those hips, read the feet. He's always looking down. He's never getting caught looking in the backfield. And he changes direction incredibly well. So he's someone that's able to keep up and he's able to motion with guys. But when the guys get a little bit bigger, he struggles because, unfortunately, he's weak. There's very little strength in his frame. So he does not like big receivers. So coming from the Pac-12, which isn't very good, the likes of Drake London, could have had this guy for breakfast. Like I say, he really struggles. He is not working well in separation. The hands aren't strong enough to beat guys in a battle. He's not able to go up high point balls because of the lack of height. So if it's a battle or he's in a physical, he's not going to have the upper hand. So the run game as well. He will never be the first one to put his hat in the ring to support in the run game. He will tackle if needs be, but the lack of production, where he only had like 40 tackles in his first year in interception. Year 2, picked up injuries, like 15 total tackles in interception. This year, a very alarming lack of production in a division or conference of Pac-12, which I can say is arse. If you're not playing well and you're not doing well in the Pac-12, there's something worrying about that. So, but I'm not going to totally share him. At the next level, as a slot cornerback, I think he will really excel. If you do not give him those big, strong kind of DK Metcalf guys where he will really struggle against, they will chew him up, spit him out. If you give him a Tyler Lockett or a Freddie Swain, like, I think he will be able to keep up with them. He will mirror them. He will take them downfield, pass them off. He has got that fluidity. He's got the speed. He's got a bit of recovery as well, like I say, so he doesn't have to stay super physical. So I think at the next level, he won't be able to hold his own on the outside. But for someone looking for, could slide to the third, if you're looking for someone that can play that nickel slot, I think he'll be really good there, because that's where his strengths excel. Not super big, not super strong, but he's twitchy, he's fluid, he recovers well, and he's able to get good battle at line of scrimmage. So there's something there, but he's certainly not for everyone. People say he's polarizing. You either really like him or you really dislike him. The range right now is anywhere between the second and the third round, people are saying, because he needs to prove that he can play outside and stay on top of the big receivers at next level, which currently he struggle with.
I just want to double check, because I'm pretty sure I know where he is on the draft board, but on PFF's draft board, I think that McDuffie is number 8 overall. I think. Let's have a look. Yeah,
Wow.
Trent McDuffie.
I would just like to put, Ryan's little, comments about him there. I'd just like to say Ryan's own college team play in the same division as he does. So if you want to take a pinch of salt with the severity of that attack on Trent McDuffie there, then please do so. Fun fact, he only has 1 sack in his entire college career. One Jaden Daniels of Arizona State.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
He's not my problem anymore, but the lack of the numbers are worrying. Like I say, there's only 3 years and there's only about 90 tackles there, which tells you he does shy away from that. Like I say, he's not wanting to get super physical, but in the right system, he could have a long NFL career, and I think he could be a good inside corner. Like I say, if he works on the outside game, there is production there. He could be a possible steal. It could be a steal if you got this guy in the third round, if he really slid.
Yeah, I mean, I joke there, but Ryan is right that there's a lot about his game that he needs to improve on. But I suppose the one thing I would say to him, the one thing I would say about him is he comes from another school that produces good level defenders. They always have a good defense, the Huskies do. Obviously, we got Levi from there last year. The linebacker that I love, Ep116, from there. He's a tackle machine. He probably takes all McDuffie's tackles. He gets hundreds of tackles every season. He's crazy, but he's coming from a system that, again, produces high-level defenders. So if you get the right person to develop him, as Ryan says, you could potentially end up getting a steal. But like this cornerback class, you are taking a gamble. Obviously, you take a gamble on every college player, but specifically on these cornerbacks, a lot of them you're taking gambles on. You're taking a gamble that you're going to be able to develop them right and that they're going to reach the ceiling that you think they're capable of. And he's one of these guys. And he's on like the side where I think maybe people are expecting a little too much of him. I think he's maybe a little higher ranked than he should be. People think he can be a little bit better than he can. But as Ryan said, he can be a good level cornerback for you if you do it right. And this is a little too much expected of him. Basically, he's coming from a good system, so he could prove everybody wrong.
So this is actually a guy I haven't really seen much of compared to the others. Not to be Mr. Measurables, but under 30-inch arms. The only players with 30-inch or shorter arms with 400-plus snaps played at outside cornerback in a single season in the last 5 years. Ross Cockrell, Dante Jackson, Cameron Sutton, Troy Hill, Avonte Maddox. Not exactly superstars. it is hard to win in the NFL playing on the outside with arms under 30 inches. All the data suggests that. It's the same for Roger McCreary, who I don't think we're going to talk about today, but he's got under 29 inches. So I'd be lying if I said I've watched lots of him, but that's going to take him off a lot of guys' boards from an outside perspective anyway.
I mean, I've just been watching some tape while we've been talking about him and his highlights, and his lack of size really shows up. Like, height-wise, he looks smaller than most people on the field. I know that American footballers are, like, big guys generally, but it's worrying. Like, you see him do all of his best plays, and I'm like, I've seen this from guys mocked lower than him, but it looks nicer with the other guys. That's really kind of cherry-picking his best plays, but I'm going to shit on the best plays of his. They're not that much, really. Like, I don't know what the hype is. I think you're right. If you can get him in the third, that's great. But if we have a look at guys who are kind of shoehorned into this possible slot-only type role, then you're looking at someone last year. I think the highest slot cornerback last year was Eric Stokes, 29 overall to Green Bay. So 8 overall on PFF's draft board, and I think he's kind of up there, top half of the first round, with pretty much everyone in the drafting community. I don't see it at all. Like, he could be a steal. He could do really, really well. He looks like he's got the work ethic, but that only gets you so far.
He excels in the run game. He's really good in the run game, and I think that's what a lot of corners this year lack. I think that's why teams are going to look more in his direction. If they want to run stuff in corner, he's probably one of the players you go to do it. I know his size wouldn't indicate that he would be like that, but that is what he does at Washington. He is really good against the run. As I say, some of these corners this year are not, which will be what appeals to teams about him.
All right, let's move this on to our third last player. We're going for the source, Ahmad Gardner out of Cincinnati. Tom, this is one of yours. What did he see from him?
Right. So Sauce Gardner, 6'3", 190, played his high school ball out of Martin Luther King in Detroit. So Detroit native, long athletic corner. The kind of one-liner on him is he never allowed a touchdown in college. In terms of frame, although he's a bit wiry, it's kind of Madden creative player style. I mean, it's rare you see a guy at 6'3" move like he does. 2021 stats, so 3 picks, PFF grade of 87.1. Also, I thought worth noting, he was an 88.0 as a freshman. And he traditionally played the boundary side. So from a versatility side in Cincy's system, he played the boundary side as a corner. So for those that don't know, if you have the ball on one side, so let's just say it's on kind of one side by the hash, the boundary side is the narrower side of the field. And then the field side is where it's wider, so you're playing in more space. The boundary side is normally a more physical guy because you're expecting him to be able to mix it up and run support a bit more. Right, so strength. So yes, he's wiry, but he does play physical. So he can bully receivers really with his length, even though he doesn't have a lot of weight. He's built for the 2022 NFL game. So tall, freaky athletes on the outside. Now, he is going to be able to lock them down. We talk about a Trent, McDuffie, Roger McCreary, like those guys can't. And Gardner has the ability to do that given his frame. I love his attitude. He's got that kind of corner swagger, which I'm a big fan of personally, but he's a competitor too. He's not kind of, the swagger can go in two ways. It can either be like diva or it can be like gamer, which is more like the Jeff Okuda style. So a big fan of that. Like the fact that he showed continuous improvement as he got more experience. So I watched some of his film from last year and it was good, but it's kind of got better and cleaner the whole way through. And I actually think that his performance against Bama, even though he wasn't tested that much, was kind of his cleanest performance of all the games I saw. He's got super high upside as a man corner because of that frame. He's a turnover generator and he's been that way throughout his college career. And that's not just picks, that's blitzing off the edge, forcing fumbles. He's done the whole thing. He drives on the ball really, really nicely. So for a taller, high-cut guy, his ability to drive on quick passes out to the flats and things like that is exceptional. He's got 2 pick sixes by the quarterback basically being a bit late throwing out to the flat, him just driving on the ball, picking it and going. Love seeing that. He's such a threat in zone coverage because of his size as well. So whilst he doesn't have perfect anticipation, he's a big frame, and therefore he can impact the pass game there. Freaky length, which he does use to reroute receivers as well. So it's one thing to be long, but it's another to actually use that. And he works hard on rerouting guys and then also using that to be able to turn his hip. So if you let a guy get free release past you, you've got to have super, super fluid hips to be able to turn and go. He manages to work them around and use that to turn his body really, really effectively. Effective blitzer off the edge, as he said, he's had sacks, but also sack fumble. And his frame just makes him so dangerous when that ball is in the air. So today think about, and this is, again, doing Mike Evans a disservice, but if you've got Mike Evans as your X receiver, you can just throw him up and ask him to box a guy out and go make a play. You can't do that against a guy like Sauce Gardner because of his size, because of his length. In terms of weaknesses, he plays too tall at times. It's to be expected. He's almost 6'3". And I think he tested a bit better than his play speed. So when he ran his first 40, I was there thinking, the guy is straining. Like, it looks like he's fighting for every yard running this 40-yard dash. Went back and watched the tape, and that's just how he runs. And obviously, he ran a 4.41, so he's plenty quick enough. But he's not like a smooth mover. He's more of a strainer. He lacks positional versatility in that he is really an outside guy. I wouldn't want him inside, especially with that frame. And he can be a bit grabby and man, but that's something which I saw got better over time. So final thoughts for me, I think he's the best corner in the draft. And for me, he's a top 5 player. I would have him after the 3 edge guys and Hamilton. And then I would have him not necessarily in that tier, but right with kind of a Trayvon Walker or someone like that, probably just below him, and then a bit more of a drop-off. So I think he is the 5th out of 5 elite players for the Lions in this draft, parking offensive line. I love Antonio Cromartie as a player comparison. So anyone who used to watch a bit more of him, he's bigger in terms of from a weight standpoint. But he was a guy who I think he went kind of middle of the first. He would have been a top 5 guy, but he couldn't stay healthy. And the way they play the game is really, really similar. So I love that as a player comparison. But yeah, I'm super high on Sauce. I hadn't watched that much of him before the Bama game, watched the All-22 on that, and just kind of fell in love. So if the Lions took him at 2, which I obviously don't think they're going to do, I wouldn't be that upset. I would love to have him on our team. If we ended up trading back to somewhere like 5, 7 or whatever in one of those situations, I would absolutely love this guy.
What about the rest of you guys?
If he sorts his... Sorry, go on, Ryan.
I'm just going to say, I agree. Like, consensus number 1 corner. He's the kind of corner you trade up for. So like you say, that 6, 7 spot, if someone's at 9 or 10, someone will give up capital to jump up 4 or 5 spaces and nab him. I have loved watching him. Like I say, he's got such good IQ. He always knows where the sideline is because he uses it as a weapon, almost like an extra defender. He knows because he's physical, he's strong, he's rangy. He can get hold of guys and he can block them out of the play. Like you say, he can use that. He can get them off the field if needs be. So he's always able to pin a guy against there and use that almost as a security blanket if he needs it. So going way to the outside towards the sideline is just a no-go because that's where he wants you. He's strong, physical, and he's a gambler as well. I've seen so many times where he'll give that 5 to 7 yard cushion, and before the ball's even snapped, he is going to undercut it. He will almost bait you into firing that fast out ball. And let's say that deceptive late speed, good 40, let's say those 2 pick sixes, he will come underneath in the bread basket and he is gone. Let's say, so he will bait you into making those mistakes there if you think that he's too far off you. So he has got all the tools to be a great outside corner next level. And I think someone is going to love taking him.
See, I think the only thing I could say on my end in terms of what I'd like to see more from him, I'd just like to see him tidy up the tackling. The tackling can sometimes be a little inconsistent. And as Ryan says there, he's a gambler. And when the gamble pays off, it pays off well. But the only trouble is when the gamble doesn't pay off, it means his angles are all wrong. It means he can't tackle properly. And when you're coming up to the NFL, when the receivers are a lot better, they got a lot more IQ about them. You've got to be careful just how much you gamble on some of these plays because they will rinse you and leave you for dead like they won't do at the college level. But apart from that, I say every other facet of his game is amazing. I think it's just the tackling that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit, and then he's going to be potentially an all-pro corner for somebody. So, yeah, by far and away the best corner in this draft, and I'm looking forward to seeing him at the next level. Don't think we're going to be in position to get him personally, but some team's going to get real stud with him.
And it's technical cleanup rather. The attitude's there. It's just like you say, he doesn't break down. He flies into it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's more that side than it is like a lack of willingness, I'd say.
Oh yeah, it's not willing. Like I say, it's just the gambling aspect of it. It's all right at college when you do it. He plays in the AAC. It's not been the great, it's not been the highest level of competition over the years. At the NFL level, you're going to get a lot of players who are going to be accustomed to this. And if they beat you in those situations, then they'll leave you for dead. So you just got to be careful with it. Just got to make sure the techniques stick, as Tom says, and he's going to be a hell of a player.
And to go with that name source as well, I agree. He's got that fine line of arrogance and swagger like Jalen Ramsey has, but he can back it up. Like say, he knows he's good. He'll let you know it. He's going to be chirpy. He's going to talk at the next level, but he's going to back it up as well. So he's going to be fun to watch.
I think someone just gets you up out of your seat when you watch him play. Like, he's someone who can kind of put the defense on his back and kind of create a negative play. Like, there was a really good debate on the Tailgate podcast. I know we're almost running short for Tom, so I'm going to go through this quickly. But there was a debate on Tailgate that said basically, do you want a defense which is going to allow 3 yards per play, put you in 4th and 1 every time? Or do you want a team that's going to allow 5 yards per play, but every now and again create a 2-yard loss? And I think the team that creates a 2-yard loss is probably the one that's going to work out more often than not, because they're the ones that stop drives. If you're averaging 3 yards per play and never getting a negative play, that's not great. And Ahmad Gardner is someone who's going to create that negative play. In his most recent season, he got 5 tackles for a loss from the cornerback position. Like, that's exceptional, especially when you only have 40 tackles on the season. 5 of them are for loss. Like, that's insane. He only had half a tackle for loss in his previous 2 years, and it speaks to his anticipation, his twitchiness, his ability to read the play as he grew into his college career. So, in a Cincinnati team that has been fantastic all the way through, he's been a cornerstone of that defense, and maybe he's over-aggressive, and maybe his tackling needs to tighten up a little bit, but he's an X factor. He's someone who's going to immediately come into Madden and get an X factor, I think. But yeah, let's move this on and get in the last couple. The penultimate guy is mine, which is the cornerback and former number 1 cornerback prospect in this draft, which is Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU. And I went into this thinking, I know what Derek Stingley's all about. He had a freshman year of good production, elite production. Jeff Okudah came out, we took him 3 overall, and Derek Stingley's a much better prospect. That's what we all heard at the time. And then we heard, that injuries and poor play kind of befell him in the next couple of years, and now he's coming out as a junior with question marks about him. Let me just go into his physicals quickly. So he played under the number 24 and 7 for LSU as a junior, 20 years old, born on 20th of June 2001. So he will be 20 during the draft, but will turn 21 before the season. 6'1", 195, so kind of prototypical cornerback measurables in terms of his production. 25 games only. 73 tackles, 56 solos, 7 tackles lost, 6 interceptions, but all of them were in the 2019 year. 20 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and 2 forced fumbles. I watched 2 games to really get a measure of exactly how this worked out. And I watched Georgia in 2019 in his freshman year, just because I wanted to get a flavour of exactly what that freshman year was like. And Central Michigan in 2021. He only played 3 games in 2021, so there wasn't a huge amount to choose from. The long and short of it is that I didn't see any difference. I did not see any difference on tape between those 2 games. And now, he's playing against CMU in 2021, so you'd hope he would look good in that game compared to Georgia in 2019. It's a completely different class of play. But you are looking at a guy, and I didn't expect to say this when I was coming out of this, who is the rarest of rare prospects at cornerback. His only question mark is whether he can stay healthy, because he is the player with the best skills in this draft at cornerback. I think if you watch the tape, I do not think that people will disagree with that take. He is the best cornerback in this draft if he's on the field. And that is the thing which is really depressing his draft stock. His value is moving between. He could go at 2. People will be mocking him at 2 to the Lions. Now, we all hate that because it's just not value, especially when is he going to be healthy? You've seen him now go all the way down to like the mid-20s in mock drafts because there's some sort of group think that he's going to fall because he only played 3 games in 2021 and he only played half the season in 2020 and it wasn't that good apparently. But the guy has elite instincts. He is one of the fastest college players there is, I think. His athleticism is off the chart. It's such a shame he did not test at the combine because he's not fit. No false steps with him. Very physical. Sticks to receivers. His ball skills are out of this world. He is scheme versatile. You see him popping up in cover 2, cover 3, single high. He could play as safety as in single high, or he play the outside cornerback. He can play linebacker. He is so versatile, so explosive, very physical. There's not a weakness in this guy's game. Like, one of the most complete players I've seen for some time. He can be a little early at the catch point to contact an offensive player, so maybe he's going to get a pass interference call every now and again. But instinctually, when I was looking at the swing passes, he's there, just as quickly as Ahmad Gardner, who we've been talking about. He's seen a lot on the right-hand side as a cornerback, like kind of they were playing him I said he was scheme versatile and he pops up all over the place, but they predominantly played him in that one position on the right-hand side of the formation. So, I think he can play everywhere, and that's what I said before, but there is a question of, does that happen all the time? Can he do that through a full season? You can rely on him on a goal line set. He's physical enough to do that. Makes very good tackles, takes good angles. I really didn't want to say it because I was just sure that, like, the last 2 years are one of those things that depresses stock, and it just makes sense. You don't want to take a guy like that early, but I don't know. If we traded down to, like, 10 with the Jets and we got, like, a first rounder in the next draft and maybe a third this year as well or something, and Sauce had gone, I mean, he would be my next corner on the board, and to be honest, I'd be tempted to place him alongside Sauce, having in my head already put him way down there. His 2021 tape does not look different to his 2019 tape. It's his limited amount of games which is pushing us down and not his production for me. What about you guys? What do you see?
Me and Ryan have been very vocal about this. Neither of us are going near him with a 20-foot barge pole. You are drafting him based on his freshman year. He's not played the last 2 years. He's been injured. There was a lot to like in his year, in his freshman year. He was one of the best corners in the game. People thought he was going to be absolutely huge, but a sheer lack of games is a worry in itself. The injury history is a worry in itself. And he's not played as well as he could otherwise. This LSU team has been poor since Joe Burrow and co left. And you're looking for players like him to step up in their absence and keep them good, but he's just not been. I mean, I'm going nowhere near him with his draft stock is depreciating, and it's just his availability is the big one. I ain't spending pick 10, my first pick in the draft, if I trade down on a guy who's barely played in 2 years. We've got enough injury-prone players here as it is, and there are a lot better. You've still got not a lot better, but you've got good corner prospects later on who can probably give you a lot better value. So, great player, but has not shown it in 2 years, and I'm going nowhere near him.
I agree that you can make a strong case that he's the best corner in the game, and that it's the only real issue is, it's the availability. On the flip side of that, Caleb Farley, he had a horrendous injury. It didn't really knock his draft stock. So I fully expect that Stingley will go still in the top 10. For me, he's cornerback too. For me, I would, even a big trade down, I do not want a corner in the first round. Even if he's there, I'm just not touching him because I just have those concerns. I know there's people out there that have not even looked at any of the games in 2021 that are just fixated with the 2019, the freshman, long way. But the availability is the only issue with me. Like I say, I know he played those games in 2021, but for me, it's a red flag. Like I say, we could pass on him and it could end up being a huge mistake. Lots of people are going to pass on him, write him off, and it's going to end up being a huge mistake for them too. If he comes good, then I fully expect him to, but for me, it's just a little bit scary. It's just a little bit of an unknown. Like I say, this last 2 years, that very little, and it is going to be injuries that could re-happen. I know he had surgery, I think, on his foot. Didn't he have some screws or bolts for a plate put in? Is that something that could ever reoccur? So the unknown of what could happen if you could have a reoccurrence in the future just puts me off a little bit, because we've unfortunately seen it of our own corner, haven't we? We've seen nothing of Jeff in 2 years, so that also probably does weigh in a little factor. It just puts me off him.
Yeah, players who get injured in college normally continue to get injured. Obviously, it's not as perfect as that, but it's rare that someone who's really struggled with injuries throughout his college career is then completely injury-free as you go into the pros. It can go both ways, but it's obviously such a huge risk factor. Now, that being said, as a man coverage guy, I think he's got the best college tape of anyone I've seen. And that's because I wasn't watching 15 years ago or something like that, so I don't know. And the fact he did do that as a freshman shouldn't be overlooked. I think it's very, and not that anyone here is doing it, but it's very easy to say, oh, he did that 2 years ago. What about the last 2 years? Which is completely valid. But he still did have the most kind of technical, polished technique as a freshman. It's just wild what he could do there. So in terms of where he is from a skill set standpoint now, he's far and away the best corner, you would have to say, based on what you've seen. The question is he maxed out? Even if he does stay healthy, is this it? And actually, your kind of 2020, 2021, which I haven't watched that much of, and some people are saying isn't as good as 2019, like that's what you get. And in which case that is kind of like a mid-first round guy or something like that. Or do you think he can get it back to when everyone was saying he's the best corner prospect in history or whatever? And he obviously had the athletic upside to do that too. So for me, I don't think the Lions can go there, especially with what happened with Okudah. I think someone will take a chance on him. And if you've got good job security as a GM, why wouldn't you? I look at the guys, probably not the Jets, because obviously, I've forgotten what's the name of their GM, forgotten it, but he's kind of a little on the hot seat now, so probably not. But you look at someone like the Giants, brand new GM, you obviously want to hit on your first picks, but you've got 2 in the top 10. You can maybe afford to be a bit more risky. Guys in the low 20s, I think, are going to be drooling over this guy. Good teams who feel secure with their front office. If you miss on it, okay, we did it for the right reasons and the value's there. So I could see someone coming up for him in that kind of mid-teen range. Wouldn't surprise me if he did go in the top 10. So whilst I like Gardner, so much of that comes down to the fact that the worries with Stingley are just too high for me to have him as like the 5th best player. But he's so good.
Yeah, right. Let's move on to our final guy, the one that everyone's talking about, that it seemed like until the train was started, potentially here. We won't maybe claim it was wholly here, but it really feels like no one was talking about Kyle Hamilton at 2 until we started annoying some people up there, and then all of a sudden people started talking about it very, very seriously, to the point where I do now think that this man is consistently the most mocked player at number 2 for the Detroit Lions. Safety Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. Tom, this was one of yours. What did you see from Kyle Hamilton?
Yeah, so I'd never heard of this guy before I got allocated. Okay, so we all know Kyle Hamilton. I feel like this will be a bit of a team effort as well, because I know a lot of people have done work on him. I was recovering from a small operation a few weeks ago, and I spent 7 hours on him, wrote 2,500 words. I wasn't planning on doing that, but I had lots of free time, and he's very easy to watch. and it's easy to dig into. So most of this everyone already knows. 6'4", 220, talked about as a generational prospect at safety. A few people disappointed with his 40 time, which I'm sure we will discuss, but he still had a 9.04 RAS score. And yeah, let's dig into it. So strengths-wise, for me, he has a rare combination of athleticism and technical polish and discipline mixed with that risk-taking persona. And it's common to get one or two of those traits. To get all three of them is super, super rare. And again, when I say athleticism, he is an elite athlete. The 40 time we'll come on to, but he is an elite athlete. He has excellent length. He has very strong play recognition, especially on screens. So he shows really, really surprising burst for such a high cut guy. When he sees something, he trusts his reads and he explodes towards the ball, eating up ground with those long strides of his. He has rare suddenness for a guy of his build and length. So he doesn't have elite change direction speed, but his suddenness to go as soon as he sees it is incredible. Shows really, really good range, covering deep parts of the field. Also working down to the ball, out to sidelines on run plays. You can find lots of plays of him either seeing a screen or a run, which is bounced outside, him running the alley and just lighting guys up for TFLs, which when you're coming from 12 or 15 yards depth is just, it's super, super rare. Play awareness is good. He mostly looks in control with offensive alignments, motions, that kind of thing. He's not necessarily a field general is how I like to describe it in terms of his energy, but he's definitely a lead by example type. He looks really good blitzing from nickel, and his length is obviously such an issue when he gets in the QB's face, gets in the throwing lanes, etc. So he impacts it when he's blitzing there. He's very controlled and deliberate. That's a skill which very few playmaking safeties have. They get too excited by everything, and actually having that level of control is really, really impressive. He's a very cerebral guy as well, which is a trait I personally love in safeties, and game-changing disruptive turnover skills, especially when playing robber. When I say robber, so if you think of what the Lions do, we play too high in terms of safeties. Robber is when you'll normally roll a guy to free safety and the other guy buzzes down. So he's playing from depth, but just coming down at pace. And you see every time he does it and the ball is somewhere around him, he impacts it, whether it's laying guys out, whether it's breaking the ball up. It is exceptional. And that's exactly where, if you're thinking about where he fits with someone like the Lions, with Tracy, who's more of a guy who'd want to roll in cover 1, cover 3 into the middle of the field, that's where Hamilton can excel. And that's personally where I think he's at his best. He makes some unicorn plays that I'm genuinely not sure anyone in the league currently can make. And I don't mean that to be hyperbolic, but given his length and given how quickly he sees something, there was a play it was against Bama in the college, in the playoffs 2021, I guess it must have been, where he's playing at depth and he runs, he basically has to cover to the sideline. So it's a 135 break, 45 degrees behind, and he doesn't see the receiver. He just knows what's happening. He breaks immediately out and makes a pass break up right on the sideline. That kind of stuff. I just don't know another guy who can do that in the league right now. Such a problem for intermediate passes over the middle, especially when coming out from depth. For me, I think he's at his best when he is working forwards. So as I said, talking about robber, things like that, but playing from depth and working forwards, you see similar things with Doe and James as well, in terms of playing with their eyes forward, coming down towards the ball, even if they're from depth, rather than turning their hips and going. And when he gets his angles right, he is elite at filling the alley on screens and things like that, which I talked about. His tackling is also pretty much as technically sound as you can get. Obviously he has length for tackling as well, which is fantastic, but he wraps up effectively. We talked today about Gardner and Booth and people who just dive in at people's shins and knees and dive in with the aggressiveness, but are not technically there. That's where Kyle Hamilton is exceptional. So whole long list of strengths. In terms of things he can get better at, I think the overarching theme on it is I think the majority of these are all coachable. I do not think that there are glaring issues in his game. I just think there's things which I would like to be tidied up, but more from a coaching standpoint. So he's not perfect, but it's a lot of stuff which can be fixed. So questionable angles at times. Against FSU and Bama, there were touchdown runs where he's got his angles wrong, and he can be overly aggressive in playing the quarterback eyes, which is not uncommon. And if you want a playmaker, that happens, so you live with it. In general, he doesn't take too many risks. he can just get locked onto the quarterback a little bit much. He looks more comfortable for me in cover 2. We'll come on to talk about 40 times, etc. But I don't think he's a traditional centre fielder. I don't think that's where he's at his best. I like him more as a cover 2 piece, covering half a field and coming down. He can be a little bit late playing over the top of routes, especially from deep middle. He gets zoned into the quarterback and actually can let guys get a little deep of him. And when you do that at the NFL level, when Tariq kills past you, you are not catching him up, whether you're running a 4.59 or a 4.39, to be honest. So I'd like to see a bit more on that. The effort is occasionally a bit inconsistent work now from deep, but that's really more game to game. He gives up the most separation from second breaks. So often when he's in trail coverage, so he's in man coverage and a guy turns him around, if you're running a corner route or something like that, that's where he can give up a little bit of separation. He's a little bit slow sometimes reading at the top of a route. So if he's sitting over the top of something, I find he's just a little bit slow on that. But I think that's more to do with not just having a clear plan on what he's doing, rather than any kind of technical deficiency. I would like to see him be more physical and press. That's one thing which for me is just like a no-brainer, especially with his frame, especially with his general physicality. In press, he doesn't want to get his hands on guys, and I have no idea why. So I think when he starts to use that more effectively, he's going to become even more of a weapon there. The violence side is a bit inconsistent. So sometimes you see a lack of violence when he's trying to get off blocks and he kind of just holds around. And other times he's overly aggressive in engaging. There was a play again in that Bama game where he just blows a guy up completely unnecessarily to try and break up a wide receiver screen. And the ball carrier just trots straight past him because he's so focused on trying to blow the guy out. A few instances of misassignments, not that fussed about it. As I mentioned, energy level a bit inconsistent. Purdue, UNC, late versus Bama, he was all over the field, hair on fire. Against someone like Cincinnati, it just wasn't there, and I don't really know why. And then finally, I would like to see the 40 a little quicker. I personally don't think it's down to injury. I just think that's him, but his speed didn't show up as an issue on tape. Like I say, I would love to have GPS data which would back that up, but at no point did I watch it thinking, I think he's going to get run around in the NFL because he won't be able to keep up. That's just not the case. So final thoughts, the guy's a stud. I get a bit frustrated and this is almost just kind of Twitter world where we only have 280 characters or whatever to work with, but when he gets kind of distilled down to one or two things, so that can work both ways. It can be, did you see the pick against FSU where he showed this incredible range, or it can be, look at his 40 time. There is so much more to this guy as a player than one or two plays that I didn't want to make a snap judgment based on 40 time, based on range, etc. I think he's exceptional. I think most of his areas for improvement are coachable. Player comparisons, you see Derwin James thrown around a lot. When I went back and watched him, he is so much more advanced technically from a polish standpoint than Derwin James. I went back to James because I was trying to look for comparisons, and it is so far apart. And I love James coming out. But when you have that level of, like, say, explosive athleticism with his vertical jumps and a lot of the other things you see, with the technical discipline and polish he has and that cerebral nature, it is such a dangerous combination. The other one I actually quite like, which you won't hear anywhere else, and people will say, really? I get a little bit of Harrison Smith with him. Now, Harrison Smith, obviously, physically, they look wildly different. But Harrison Smith is sneaky big and tall. He's bigger than Derwin James in terms of height, same length, similar kind of build, 215. But he's a really cerebral guy that you can do a lot of things with. And that is where I see Kyle Hamilton having a role. It's not as a true center fielder or something like that, but someone who is going to impact the run. He's going to impact the pass, and you are going to have to account for him on all three downs. Big question, would I take him at 2? I really don't know. I'm sure we're going to come to that now. I'm so torn with it because I think we've heard lots of arguments of why he should be taken at 2. I'd like to hear more why he shouldn't, and not really just the positional value side, which obviously we've heard the argument, but I'm really, really torn on it. So I kind of, after that long rant, I open up to the floor.
Oh, where do you go after something like that? You know, that's the biggest deep dive I've ever heard on him there before. So, you know, wonderful job with that. I mean, you mentioned the word there. He's a unicorn. He's rare. You simply don't find guys like this coming out of college. He has he's an athletic freak. He's up there with the best athletes in the entire division, the entire NFL now. but he's got the brain of Luke Keithley. He's highly, highly intelligent when he's on this pitch, and you all know how much I love Luke Keithley. You need guys like that on your team. People harp on about this 40. Oh, he ran a 4.6. Oh, he's not very fast. He doesn't need to be because he knows what the play is going to be before it happens. You said there in your analysis. He reads plays, he reads quarterbacks, he knows what's going to happen. He doesn't play. There are no aspects of his game which are really that bad. As you said there, there's a few coachable things, but this kid's coming through college. Every single player coming out of college has issues. They're not going to be the perfect, 10 out of 10 when they come up to college. There's going to be issues there. But in terms of the fundamentals of his game, the way that he plays the game, they're elite, by far and away better than anybody. And he is the best football player in this draft. And you said there at the end, obviously, you've heard why we should take him at 2, but you've not heard why we shouldn't take him at 2. But for me, the only reason you shouldn't take him at 2 is the one you mentioned. It's his positional value. That's the only reason we're having this conversation as to whether we should take him or not. It's because of his position, and it's ridiculous. Players like this do not come along very often. He's coming at a position which is one of the biggest needs on this team. We have not had a playmaker in the secondary now for a long time, not at safety. We still miss Glover Quinn, who's been gone 5 years. This guy is going to be special in the league, and there's absolutely zero reason you don't take him at number 2. He's just something different. And this team needs difference makers. And it doesn't matter where his position is, you get him on this team, you get the best talent prospect in this draft by a distance for me, and you make your team that much better. He's a wonderful player. And, people need to stop with this positional value thing, because all you're doing is hurting your own team by that.
Ryan?
Yeah, not much I can add. The only thing I will add, if I could make if Kyle Hamilton was an animal, I'd say he's something like a springbok or a gazelle, because from a standing start where all seems like so calm, like this click of a wrist, he covers ground ridiculously quick. Like I say, he's got that long rangy stride. Was it the interception against Florida State where he's covering deep thirds on his own? The ball's sailing out to the sideline, and you think, well, it's sailing out of bounds. The receiver's not going to get it, and he gets there, and he just sticks out this like baseball mitt, and he doesn't even get a finger on it. He just grabs it one-handed, gets in his belly, slides out of bounds, got the toes in. Like, it was an unreal effort to think about where he started from centre field, covering that, and someone being pinned to the sideline. So that whole play just summed up everything about it. Like you say, everything's kind of calm. Like you say, sometimes it looks like that lack of effort or the lack of vigorous play, but then suddenly he can change it on just like that. Like I say, he's a game changer, he's a baller, and that play just came out of nowhere. You just assume incompletion, but to get that ball and make it complete as well, keep his feet in bounds and haul it out the air was phenomenal effort.
So, a couple of things from me, not to add too much because it's all been said really already, but I don't think you can say enough about this guy's footballing brain. I hate the trope football player, but he is a second ahead of everyone else. Like, who cares about your 40 time when you're 5 yards ahead of everyone else because you start going half a second before anyone else thought to do so? Like, that matched with his explosion grade, it tells you everything you need to know about his athleticism. He doesn't need the 40 time, so that's another thing. But the thing that really stuck out to me on tape was his ability to make plays. And what I mean by that is when there's a batted ball, when there's a deflection, when there's a 5% chance that something might happen, he sticks his arm out just in case. Like, there's an interception that I've seen a few times now, and I can't recall what team it's against, but he's in the back centre of the end zone, and he just sticks out his hand, even though the ball's not anywhere near him, and it deflects off the offensive player and into his hand. And it's like, how did you see that was going to happen? Like, that's not something which should be happening. And a few other times in deflections, he's there already. Like, it shouldn't be his ball, but he's getting it. So that's something that sticks out to me. Football player too generic, but sees the game before it happens is massive. Tom said he'd be torn at 2. I think I know what you guys are going to say. Hamilton at 2.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when I say torn, if we pick him at 2, I'm going to be so excited. I'm just meaning if I was in that chair making the decision, I think it's harder. I will be more excited if we take him than any other player in the draft. The question is whether it's the right decision. I guess time will tell.
I'd agree. You know, there are not many players on this team who you would get up and go and watch on a day. And he is a guy who you know is going to make a play, who's going to make you go, oh my God, I'm glad I was here to see that. That's the sort of impact player that he is. And again, this is a position of such desperate need. If this was like, you know, we were going for, I don't know, like an offensive tackle. If this was an offensive tackle conversation, and this was a whole thing with positional value and that, I know it just theoretically, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We're like, no, we don't matter. We've already got him. We need someone like this. I'm not having Will Harris as safety 2 again. I refuse.
There we go. Right, that wraps up our talk on secondary. We're going to move into the news in just a little bit, but there were 2 questions that popped up from Dan. Tom's going to be leaving us now, so we'll see you soon, Tom. Thank you for that in-depth.
Right, Tom. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. See you soon.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, there goes Tom. Dan had a couple of questions I just want to address before we go into the rest of this. So, first one, he says, if we got Allen Robinson or why has his name escaped me? The safety from New Orleans, Marcus Williams. Thank you. Will that mean that we need Goff's salary off the books next year for that? I presume that's and as opposed to or, because personally I don't think or moves the needle at all for Goff's contract.
This
But
year?
no, next year. Do we need Goff off the books next year if we had Allen Robinson and Marcus Williams?
No, we're slated to have about 90 million in free agency at the minute so far next year. I know the Bears are up about 130, but we're slated to have a lot more. Plus, we can cut guys a lot cheaper as well. I know Brockers goes from 9 million costing us to just 1 million next year, and Vitae goes down a lot. So you can make moves to incorporate these. If you did all the max moves for the players, it's like Romeo Aquari, you can cut cheap as well. So you could have over 100 million in free agency next year. So no, you don't need to shift Goff's contract. Not if he plays well.
Okay. All right. Last one from him was, which safety would you guys prefer with either pick 32 or 34, which we kind of touched on, but just to confirm it, what do you guys think?
Brisker.
There we go. That clears that up pretty concisely. I think Brisker will be gone. I don't think Hill will be, so I would take Hill because I think that's more realistic. But if Brisker was there, I'd take Brisker. On second-hand knowledge, I need to do a bit more, though. Right. It has been a very, very active day-to-day. News is coming out all the time. Something just dropped about Evan Brown's new contract, and we're going to talk about all of that now. So let's dive into the news straight away. And if you want a question answered, do drop it in the chat now, and we'll try and get to it before the end. I know we've been going a while, and there's a lot more to go through. So we will try and go through that quickly and get to your questions too. But thank you for staying with us, and please do like and sub and all that good stuff. The Lions have made a significant number of re-signings in the last few days. Headed up to start with by wide receiver Josh Reynolds. He was signed to what was billed as a 2-year, $12 million deal. But when it boiled down to it, it's a 2-year, $6 million deal, $2.7 million guaranteed, worth up to $12 million with incentives. The cap's hit, I think, is $2 and $4 million, something like that. Your instant reaction on Reynolds, because at the moment he's going in as our WR1 in terms of build prototype. You know, Amon-Ra is not a WR1 type, so he's the only guy in the room at the moment with that sort of frame, and it appears to me to be quite cheap, more so than my instant reaction to 2-year, $12 million was one of horror, but this is a lot more palatable.
Perfect reason why you don't judge a contract when it's first announced. You have to wait for the the details. It always said up to 12 million. So I was always confident the deal wasn't going to be that big in terms of guaranteed money and more in incentives. But forget the contract aside for 1 second. You want players on your team who are going to come here, they're going to make you better, and they are going to fight hard to be in your team, and they're going to develop while they're here. And you could see after he got here, he just kept on getting better. He was a favored receiver of Jared Goff. Obviously, they've played together before, but he changed the dynamic of our offense. He gave us a bit more of a downfield threat. He gave us more of a seasoned guy in there to help the rookies out. I mean, I don't think it was any coincidence that Amon-Ra's production went through the roof after he got here. You need a bit more coverage on some of these vet guys in as well. And he's earned a new deal. And the fact that he's willing to come back even on a heavily incentivized deal, to come back and do it again shows you the attitude of him. He's grateful that we gave him the opportunity because the Titans did nothing with him. The Titans, completely and utterly misused him. We gave him an opportunity. He took it, and it's worked well for both sides. He's now got job security. He's now got a decent wage, and he's now got something to prove to go after all those incentives. So I like the player. I like the deal. I think it's good for us. We needed the receiver depth. There's a few guys who aren't coming back currently. So I think all round they've smashed the ball out of the park with this one.
It's a good foundation to build on. Like you say, we're still gonna, in the first 4 or 5 picks, we're still gonna take that prototypical wide receiver one. We're still gonna get someone 6'3", 6'4", imagine, like I said, to complement him. But I don't think anyone can deny that the moment that Reynolds came in last year, we looked a little bit better. Results didn't always go our way, but we looked better. And that's because up until Reynolds coming, defenses did not respect Detroit because there was no deep threat. There was no one to make those corners go a bit deeper. There's no one to make the safeties not come up in the box. He gave us that outlet there. He helped stretch the field, which gave room for everyone underneath, which Jared Goff was crying out for. And like I said, he feels like he's found a home here. Like I said, Goff needed him. Maybe he needed Jared Goff back as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, he had a bit of a rough time in Tennessee. Titans didn't really do much to him. He didn't get much love there. So he came to us in an hour of need when we need someone. And he's been on with a fair contract. He could have got maybe a little bit guaranteed more money elsewhere, but I think he can live up to whatever the incentives are. I think he can have a nice little earner if he wants to be. And he could make a very solid wide receiver 2, 3 in this offense, because I am convinced that we will manage a much better passing offense this year, and he can be one of the vocal points in it, and he can help whichever rookie we draft because he'll be a good mentor as well. So, like I say, up to 12 million scared some people, but when you realise it's realistically going to be 7 to 8, maybe with incentives, that's nothing over 2 years.
I mean, never mind the over 2 years. It's a 1 year, $2.7 million deal. And you can keep him on for a second year if you fancy it. And if you put it like that, it sounds like a steal.
You can bin him off after a year.
Absolutely. So the first year cap hit is $2 million and it's 2.7 guaranteed. So you cut him and the 700 dead in year 2. Oh well. It's not a big deal. And I think there was a lot made when Reynolds came in about the fact that the offensive coordinator changed, or effectively changed. The play calling changed at the time, and we had our left tackle come back at the same time as Josh Reynolds. And people going, well, so which factor's the biggest one out of those? And it's like, why can't it just be all 3? Josh Reynolds was a big part of what happened in our increase in offensive efficiency. We were a completely different team. And I do think a big part of it is Anthony Lynn not calling the plays. But Reynolds added a dimension to this team that we didn't have before. And if you have a look at Christian Kirk's deal, that we will talk about later on in this podcast, 1 year, $2.7 million for someone like Josh Reynolds is in a completely different planet to what some of these receivers are going to get. Now, is Christian Kirk better than Josh Reynolds? Sure. Is he that much better than Josh Reynolds? No. Not at all. Not close to being that good. So I think that's a really, really good value deal for the Lions. Let's run through some of the rest of these. Centre Ryan McCollum and outside linebacker Rashad Berry have signed minimum deals of $825,000, $875,000 respectively. The contract terms for Evan Brown have just been released. He was re-signed a little bit earlier in the week, but the terms weren't released until 5 minutes ago. 1 year, $2.025 million, 600 grand guaranteed, about 400 grand under the tender. And we discussed on this pod the idea that we might tender him, and maybe tender him higher than the right of first refusal tender. You know, could we pay him the second round tender at 4 million or so, and would someone go for that? And he signed here for half that. Like, that's got to be a win, boys. The guy was a borderline top half centre in the league last year in relief of Frank Ragnow, and he's going to be our backup interior offensive lineman. That's huge.
I think it says a lot about his character. He could have got more money. Like I say, I'm guaranteed, I am convinced. Elsewhere, he could have pushed a little bit harder, but that is a very team-friendly deal. Like for someone that started 12 games last year and played to a level that was above what we thought he was capable of. In relief of Frank Ragnow last year, the offense barely changed its tune. He still run a tight ship. He was still great in the middle, like I say. He barely gave up little pressure. So we looked seamless. He didn't even like Ragnow were gone for half the time he was there. So as backup depth, that is incredibly cheap. And I think these extra jumbo packages, good athlete, you're going to see him get on the field this some way or form this season. They're going to use him, like I say, and it's great that he wants to stick around because we know now if we do fall foul of any injury, he's the kind of guy that you're willing to plug and play in the interior if needs be. He will have a good go at it and he'll give all his effort.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful signing for us. You know, he was playing like a starting centre last year, and we didn't even know Frank Ragnow was missing. And, you know, how often do you find that level of depth on your line there? I mean, it was critical that we brought him back. And the fact we've been able to bring him back again for the money we have shows that he's invested. He could have gone and got a starting job somewhere. He probably gone and got a lot more money somewhere else. But we have a wonderful O-line coach here. I think he's just going to get better. I think we might see him outside of centre this year if they try and get him in on guard as well to try and bring in some looks for him. You know, it's a great move. It's a great depth. But O-line depth is vital. It's one of the most vital things on your team, and it's one of the things we've not really had for years. We've not had an O-line for years. We've not had a starting five for years, let alone guys who can come in and replace the starting five and come in and play like a starter. So it was the most critical bit of business on the O-line. We got it done.
Yeah. Right, let's move on now to another divisive bit of news, because the Lions boys, they've dropped the ball. They've re-signed a quarterback, and it's not someone who's going to come in and compete for the quarterback one job. And he's being paid too much money. Tim Boyle, 1 year, $2 million with $1.75 million guaranteed. What are the Lions playing at, boys? They're absolute fools. I mean, they've paid him too much money, and he's an absolute bum. He can't do very well here. Or is everyone mad with that take on Twitter because he is not being paid anything? Like $2 million for a backup quarterback. Who gives a flying F? Really? Come on.
As you said it, backup. In an ideal world, even for $2 million, he never sees the field, and I'm fine with that. Like I say, in an ideal world, we never have to play him. But if we give him $2 million, but if he's there ready to go, and if we do bring in a rookie, an undrafted free agent, I still think we'll bring in a young kid. If he can just help the kid long term, be worth his weight in gold. Like I say, I was never his biggest fan, but if you had to choose him or Blau, which one was going to return as QB2, I think he was always going to be Boyle, because Blau has just shown that he's a clipboard guy, whereas Boyle did come in and try and have a go, and he did show flashes as well. So in relief, if needs be, he will step in and he will do the job for you. So I'm fine with it. It's pocket change. Like I say, people wanted Marcus Mariota. He'd have cost you $5-6 million for a 1 year deal, and he still might never have played.
5 or 6 million for Mariota? Come on. He got 8 from the Raiders to be a backup in the first year.
He's struggling though now, like you say. I think 7 million, but that would have been 7 million too much for a backup. And some people were clamoring for him.
People seem to have forgotten that we paid Chase Daniel $13 million not so long ago. This is not a bad deal. That was a bad deal. And we gave him nearly 6 million in guarantees as well for him to do what? Throw into the stands. At least Boyle can throw a pass to a receiver. Chase Daniel cannot. So, if people are going to get upset with Brad Holmes over a backup quarterback, then the priorities are in the wrong order. We're in the middle of a fully fledged rebuild. I won't care less if he can't land on the quarterback backup. If he starts missing on quarterback one, wide receiver one, edge one, etc., then you start getting worried. But the fact is, he's building this roster very well. We've made some great signings, and backup quarterback is backup quarterback. Who's going to get in a tiff over it? We've not even had the draft yet. We may still get another guy in the draft to compete with him. So until you know what the full picture is, you really, really can't criticize this so much.
There are very few teams in this league who have a viable quarterback two who can win multiple games in relief. There are plenty of guys who can win the odd game, but ask them to string two together in a row. It's rare. It's really super rare. The Raiders were like one of the few teams to try that a couple of years ago, and you know what? It didn't really work out for them. If you are signing Marcus Mariota, you are trading Jared Goff. Sorry, but you do not keep two guys of that caliber on the team. You just don't. If Mariota was coming here, it's because you're shipping Goff out. So you need to decide what you want to do, because you do not commit that sort of money to someone who doesn't see the field. The function of a backup quarterback is to prepare your defense in the best way possible to face the team you are facing each week. The guy has spent 4 years with Aaron Rodgers and 1 year in this system. He is the perfect guy to come back, and he's taking less money than he had last year by almost $1 million. Win. He didn't show anything last year that he hadn't shown in previous years, so we're getting exactly what we thought we were paying for in the first place, which is someone who has a long way to go. And that's fine. Let's move it on. And we have a couple of guys that we're very used to here. Linebacker Alex Anzalone. First one, his contract details have not yet been disclosed, I don't think. But he's returning on what I think is going to be a fairly team. Actually, no, I did see them earlier, but I haven't put them down. 1 year.
Up to 4.
Up to 4, thank you. I'm torn on this because I think last year he was 2.75, and I didn't want to return him on that value. And suddenly he's getting a pay rise. Now, he did much better with Collins being released, and he's certainly a leader in that locker room. That is for sure. But is he really worth up to that amount of money, boys?
No. I was give or take. If he comes back, that's fine, because 1, he knows the system. 2, he's got the trust of his head coach and the defensive coordinator. 3, 4, he can call plays. Like saying he's not bad in coverage. So I was fine to returning. But if up to 4 million, he's able to earn a pay rise, he's going to have to earn that. Like you say, he's going to have to step up a little bit, because like I say, he started very slow last year. Whether we want to blame him or blame Collins, but this year he can't have that. He can't have those teething issues at the start of the year. I'm still going to draft a linebacker high. I'm still looking for his replacement. I don't think Anzalone coming back changes our draft strategy whatsoever. Some people think it does. I don't think it does. He's still going to take a high level linebacker, so it's fine. Like I say, if he's probably going to be a captain, like I say, you know what you're going to get with him. Pops up, good passes defended, might get the odd interception. So I'm fine with it. I'd like the details to come out. I'd like his guaranteed money to be similar to what it was last year. Like I say, not. So, which I expect it will be. I expect it's going to be half guaranteed, half incentives.
Sorry, who are we on about?
Anzalone.
Sorry, I'm getting trolled by someone on Twitter and I'm just putting them in their place. Yeah, we're British and we don't know football because we've got 36 million in cap space to spend. Idiot. Anyhow, Anzalone, I like it. I was not his biggest fan last year. You'll know, me and you had a lot of arguments about him and what he was going to bring to this team. But, once Jamie Collins left, we said he grew into the game. He is the leader or the de facto leader in there at the minute. He's going to be a good veteran presence for the young guys who are coming in. Presumably, we're going to be drafting another linebacker as well. So we're going to have a lot of young guys in there who need leadership, in there. I'm fine with it. It's a 1 year, $4 million deal. We don't know what it is yet. Obviously, it's incentivized. So it's not going to be a lot on his base salary again, unless we do know what the contract is now. But I would assume it's probably going to be in the 2 million range, and he'll be able to earn another 2 million. Again, it doesn't threaten the cap going forward. It's just a 1-year deal. So this time next year, we can either keep him or move on. So I don't mind it from that standpoint. Those are the kind of deals we need this year again. Get the rookies in, get the sensible value free agent deals in like this. And, he can offer something here. I think the trouble is the linebacker room's been barren again for a long time now, just like at safety. And if you put better supporting cast in there around with him, he'll flourish more. It's very hard when you're doing a lot of it on your own. Don't forget, we had JRM making his first year last year, first year being a starter, Barnes a rookie. Very difficult to do it all on your own. So I like the deal. I like the value again. I think it's just a lot of these deals. I like the value. It's sensible value that's not risking the rebuild and potentially offers us a lot of upside.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of upside in this. So I think that he's someone, like you say, that was hampered by Collins, and his play certainly improved. I think that he missed a couple of games with injury, but nothing like the season enders that we've seen. He injured the same shoulder once again, but it didn't seem to put him out for too long this time, which I think was actually slightly a positive thing on his resume this year. And he showed the ability to lead. I think he's going to be Derek Barnes is behind where we'd hope he'd be at this point. And Zaloni is someone who I don't think is going to hamper that process. In fact, he's probably going to want to foster that process. So I think it's a really positive thing, given where we thought Barnes would be, and that he's not. That it's a really positive move for this team. I think that he's going to walk in with the green dot day one and potentially gradually hand it over, which is kind of what we hoped for last year. Maybe it comes true this year. Let's move on. Sean Dion Hamilton's been re-signed. I believe that's for the minimum. I'm not 100%. We haven't seen, I don't think, anything on him yet, so we'll see what that is shortly. The other really big bit of news is that safety Tracy Walker has re-signed. 3 years, $25 million with $17 million guaranteed. We were doing a lot to and froing about whether we wanted him back, how much we wanted him back for. Then Marcus Williams comes in. Do we want him? Marcus Williams maybe at 14, 15 million on average. What could we get Tracy for? Seem to adjust what we thought the asking price might be. 8.33 million average a year. What do you boys reckon? Is this about where it should be? Is it a steal? Are we overpaying? What do you make of Tracy coming back?
Said it on Twitter. I think it's one of the best value deals of the day in regards to what we've got him for. I mean, I know on the outset it looks like 8 million here, but I think it works out about 5.5, something like that. We're getting him for a year, and we all said, well, we'd maybe do 7 or 8. We'd be, okay with that, but we've got him for less. This is a guy who, once again, he's a lion through and through. He got a hell of a lot better last year, again, in a room where he's had very little support to work with in terms of like good vet guys with him, solid youngsters. We've not invested in the safety position really at all. And yet he still looked really good. And you want those guys in the locker room. He's a leader. He's respected. You saw Slay come out today and say, how great, how happy he was to see the deal done. And, he's a guy who's highly respected around the league. He's been really good for us. We've got the deal sorted. Again, it's not massive, and we've got a really good player out of it. So I love the deal for Tracy. I think it's been one of the best of the day for value, as far as I'm concerned. And that's without the rose-tinted glasses on. I just think from a value standpoint, what he gives to us, what we're getting him for. Brad Holmes has been great so far, and it's just so nice to see us not balls up in free agency for a change.
I think everyone last year was kind of talking about it like he's playing because he wants to get paid. And like I said, there was like a cloud over him. I think now we're going to see the best Tracy next year because he's got job security. The deal's done. So now there's no more talk about it. Now it's just back down to business. Now no one will be talking about it next year. Is he staying? Is he leaving? What's he going to earn? I think he could have pushed to 9-10. They still might have considered it. So I think at 8.33, let's say 6.56 guaranteed incentives, I think it's an absolute steal. When you expect that Marcus Williams is going to be getting anywhere between 13 and 15 a year for a guy that's only 2 years younger, I think we've done pretty well there. I think he knew the market for a safety was strong, and I think he's made a very sensible offer or agreement there. Didn't push his luck, so I think next year he's going to be really good. I think we might see the best year next year of his career. Like I say, now he's just got that peace of mind, the calm, it's all settled down, back to business.
I love it. He's someone that you want to stay. He knows the system very well. His attitude's fantastic. We've screwed him over by playing him in the wrong position. When he's played in the right position, he's looked really good. He still needs to develop, and he's got a long way to go. And, when the cap increases, this deal's going to look exceptionally cheap. Now, there's a bit of projection here, because if he has the same year he did last year, this is about average for that sort of level of production. He started super hot. First 6 games, he was PFF's number 2 ranked safety, and he fell off in a fairly substantial way in the final 10, 11 games of the year compared to his first 5 or 6 games. But it showed what he's capable of. He needs to be at that level more consistently, and if he can do that, even a little bit more often, he's going to be an absolute steal at that position, at that contract value, and he's going to be a leader on that defense. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Tracy can do in year 2 of this regime, which looks like it's going to help him no end.
Let's just get him some help now. He needs some help.
Yeah, he really does. A couple of other guys who aren't exclusive rights free agents. Safety CJ Moore, the personal protector, special teams ace, re-signed to a 1-year, $2.4 million deal with $800,000 guarantees. His cap hit is going to $1.75 million because the rest is in incentives. And Jalen Elliott has also been re-signed down there in the depth chart, also a gunner, I believe, on special teams. And moving on to the exclusive rights free agents, we have tendered 13 of them today. So that's Jack Fox, a punter.
This was a long time ago.
Was it?
This was about 5 or 6 days ago.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay, fine. Well, here we go. The guys that we have tendered. Anyway, Jack Fox, punter, Scott Daly, long snapper, Mark Gilbert, Juju Hughes, the cornerbacks, Godwinning from UK, running back, Tom Kennedy, the wide receiver, Tommy Kramer, the right guard, Jesse Lemonnier, the outside linebacker, Matt Nelson, the tackle, Riley Peterson.
Patterson.
Yeah, they've misspelled this on SI. I'm reading this from SI because it's the link you put on there. They put Peterson. I knew that was wrong as soon as I saw it, but I couldn't think then what the actual bloody right thing was. Patterson, the kicker, fantastic player as we all know. Bobby Price, my draft crush from a few years ago, the safety. Anthony Pittman, the linebacker. Brock Wright, the tight end. That's a hell of a list of ERFAs, because your ERFAs have been at the team less than 3 years, or they've accrued less than 3 years of NFL experience. And down that list, Mark Gilbert is one of those guys who really showed up for me last year in relief at cornerback. He looked like he really flashed some bits and pieces. Who could forget that Tom Kennedy throw last year? Tommy Kramer came in and showed some really good reps at right guard. Jesse Lemonnier looked quite good at outside linebacker, got a sack or 2 down the stretch. Matt Nelson is everyone's favourite 6th lineman. The kicker and the punter are both there. I think we might argue they're some of the best in the league right now. And then Brock Wright really showed flashes at tight ends. This is a really good group of ERFAs who are going to be here for at least 1 year, if not a few.
Yep, they all saw meaningful, like I say, whether it was injury, they all saw meaningful playing time. Pretty much every single person there played at least a minimum handful of snaps, so we got a good look at them. And like I say, now we can discuss long-term deals with, Fox, Patterson, Daly. So if you look at that list, you see something in common. It's special teams. A lot of those guys are key special teamers, and they will play a lot of special teams this year as well. Like I say, Gilbert showed flashes. So we're retaining the core of one of our strongest units, which is playing field position. And that's something that we use to our benefit when we are struggling. So it's no surprise that we're retaining a lot of those guys there.
Yep, we got Legatron back. That's all we wanted, really. So, we've got the special teams sorted. We've got the depth guys in there, as Ryan said. They've all shown something to warrant coming back. So until we get into the real meat and bones of the draft and any guys who get cut in June, we know these guys are going to come in and fight hard and try and play for their place. And again, that's what this year is about, trying to find those hidden gems like the Jerry Jacobs and that who will come in and fill up a roster spot for us with a good quality player. If even only one or two of these guys hit this coming year and get into the team, that's a great hit rate, really, for building your roster. So I'm excited to see some of these guys back and see what they can do. You mentioned Gilbert, you mentioned Lamonier. They've both come in. They've both made plays in a team that wasn't great on defense last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Now, hopefully, we're going to get a few studs on there this year as well. But yeah, the roster's filling out all right at the minute. Lots of good potential on there. We just need to start adding some elite talent in to go with it, and we're looking hunky-dory.
Absolutely right. A little bit more Lions news, and then we're going to move into the rest of free agency. The Lions have informed defensive end Trey Flowers that he will be released on the first day of the 2022 league year. The league year starts in 2 days' time, so he will be released on Wednesday. I don't actually have how much that will save against the cap, but here it is. Trey Flowers.
10.6.
$10.386 million. And if you are looking ahead to 2023, he's also on the book for $23.6 million next year. So we won't have that at all against the cap in 2023 by releasing him at that point, unless he's designated a post-June 1st cut, which I don't think anyone's expecting at this point. The NFLPA have elected Jalen Reeves-Maybin to a 2-year term on its executive committee. That means that he's going to be representing the players and what they think, especially from a special teams point of view. Unclear right now whether he is going to be returning to the team, however. And cornerback Jeff Okudah is changing his number again, second time in 2 years, to number 1 from 23. Any thoughts on Trey and Jalen and Jeff and anyone that we haven't re-signed that you were looking for, boys?
If Jalen was coming back, he'd have re-signed by now. I don't think Jalen Reeves-Maybin's coming back.
I think for me, the Sean Dion Hamilton re-signing's telling there, because they had him playing with the firsts last year, and they, I think we were all expecting going into the season that he would maybe hold the position that Reeves-Maybin did this year, and maybe they feel that the value they're going to get if SDH can replicate his form and get in the team is going to be a lot cheaper than by paying out Jalen. Or it might also point to a new change in draft strategy that we're going to go high on a linebacker and bring Barnes in. So, but yeah, I agree with her. I think it probably might have been done by now, because you would expect it. He's been here a long time. You would expect them to come to terms quickly if they wanted to do it. So it's intriguing, but it's one more remain on. Obviously, Trey was going to go. Injuries have just meant that deal has been horrendous, but we can kiss goodbye to the last of the bad Patricia era contracts now. We're in a new era, finally, where all this dead cap and these contracts are no longer going to hang around us and prevent us from moving forward. Obviously, we've got to take the hit this year, but it's nowhere near as bad as all the cumulative ones last year. This time next year, we'll be free of it completely. So, yeah, it's good to see. I'm still hoping that they get Charles Harris. I'm still holding out hope. I reckon with him, they're more letting him test free agency, see what he can get. But there's a deal on the table for him if he wants it. So we'll see with that one. I'm still hoping he does come back. But out of that, I don't think there's many others who I would bring back. Certainly not one of them. I'm waiting till that one's gone so I can celebrate. But yeah.
I know I have been lambasted for my take on Trey Flowers a few times, but I'm sad to see him go. He should go. His contract is insane. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but there is room on many a team for a non-flashy guy who gets his head down, does his job. I wish he'd stayed healthier, because I'd love to have seen what he could have done without that. So thank you for your service, Trey. Good luck with the future. It wasn't your fault that you were signed for an insanely large deal. I think Jalen's going to come back. I'm still holding out hope. I do not think that our scouting staff say, please, Jalen, come to the Senior Bowl. We'd love to have you there just to observe, even though you're leaving us. That's not the actions of someone not here. Sorry. I know the actions since then do kind of seem to indicate that he's on his way, but I think he's coming back. I just think maybe he's waiting to see how things shake out, see if he gets blown out by a really good offer. But I think he'll be on his way back. Okuda changing number, I'm nonplussed by completely.
That's the thing. Someone, it's like Harris, someone might pay him. Because at the end of the day, JRM's gone from perennial special teamer to starting linebacker over the course of 1 year, and he's played decent. And there might be a team that's starved of a linebacker that might go, you know what, I'm actually going to offer him a little bit more than the Lions are. And if so, to be fair, he's earned that. He spent years on our team just doing special teams work, working his ass off for it. If he gets the money for it, then let him take it. That's fine. And, that could be what the holdup is with him. But, I mean, when the push really comes down to shove, if you're going to have a team that's, like, progressing for postseason appearances and that, you would want a guy like him probably fourth on your depth chart, maybe fifth. I don't think he's going to be the guy who's going to take you there. So maybe they've just decided, look, let him go and get the money elsewhere, and we'll really invest in linebacker now and really try and upgrade. For as well as he's done, we could maybe do even better.
Yeah, maybe. Right, let's move it on. And I just want to quickly touch on the guys that have left the Lions as it stands, and whether you think any are definitely coming back, those you hope to come back, those you disappointed haven't come back as yet. The 6 at the moment are wide receivers Hodge and Raymond, defensive end Charles Harris, tackle Nick Williams, linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin, safety Marlowe. Any of those guys fitting into any of those categories for you boys?
I'm sad Marlowe's gone. Well, I know we said this when we were doing the free agency roundup, but I thought he did really well last year compared to what we paid him, to what he came in and did. I'm sad that he's gone. I'd like to see him for depth in that room this year, especially if you're going to draft Hamilton or you're going to draft the safety high. You've got Tracy in there. He's the kind of guy you want around in the rotation to take snaps up. So it's sad. Yeah, I didn't want to see him go, but maybe someone's offered to pay him a lot of money. Maybe he wanted a bit too much. We will never know. But, I thank him for the year he had with us. And, as I said on Twitter, wish him all the best. Hope he gets a good deal somewhere.
I think, Marlowe, the rest on the board, but I think Marlowe, I think there'll be an offer on the table. They've told him, if the grass isn't greener anywhere else, we'll come back, we'll get X amount. If you don't want it, thank you for your services, goodbye. But I don't think the door's fully closed on him, like I say, because we do run 2 free safety schemes, which he fit in pretty well. So there's a place here if they need him.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Charles Harris is one that we've spoken about before. I do wonder if he's just testing the market to see how much he could get paid at this point, because with the year he had, 7.5 sacks when you aren't the starting outside linebacker is not to be sniffed at, considering the number of snaps he eventually had. His efficiency was pretty bloody good, and he did get better against the run down the stretch. So someone who's improved his skills, he could get a bit of a bag out there. So do you think there's an offer on the table from us, or do you think we're willing to just let him walk at this point?
I think we'll let him walk. I think they've probably told him, here's the maximum, go fetch it. Like I said, I think someone is going to overpay for him. And he's the kind of boom or bust guy, like, touch wood, hope he's not, but next year he could be totally ineffective and he could have earned loads of money. Like I say, he's that kind of guy that you just don't know what's going to happen next year. Is he a flash in the pan? You never know. So there is that sense of risk about paying him.
All right, let's move it on, and we'll talk about the rest of the NFC North bits and pieces. There was a few bits of news I picked out from there. The funniest of which was that Kirk Cousins is getting re-upped for a 1-year extension to his contract for $35 million, fully guaranteed. This, of course, changes his cap hit from, in 2021, fucking insane, to merely just, oh my god. Whereas now in 2023, they're also stuck with him in a holy fuck no, with no trade clause. So now, there's no getting rid of this guy. The Lions rejoice for 2 more seasons, boys.
Yeah, and their GM said, we value very high-level quarterback play that's going to get us success here. In the same sentence as Kirk Cousins. I laughed a hell of a lot. This is the second time they've extended him. What have they done there with him absolutely nothing, to be fair. So, I just keep throwing that money away, boys. Skull Nation, send it on a bang average quarterback and, let your good players go because apparently they're shopping their playmakers. They can't afford to keep Cousins. They know that. I think Daniil Hunter's going to be the next one to go. But from our point of view, it's great because he's just going to keep on holding the Vikings back. So let them Viking, as they say.
I think the no trade clause is the weirdest bit for me. Like, to give him all that money and then give him all the power as well. So you've almost just basically just said, well, it doesn't matter if you're terrible. We've given you all this money. We can't ship you out unless you say so. So that is the weird bit for me. I get trying to restructure the cap now, so kick the can down the road later, which don't help. But now they are tied to him physically and emotionally, almost. Like say they can't move him.
I mean, the thing is, he knew that his leverage was the highest it's possibly been in his career. He had a cap hit which was untenable. They couldn't cut him. They could maybe trade him, but what would their future be like without him? And that's what they're fearing. So Cousins knew they needed to create space. And so the Vikings have approached him and said, we need to do something here. And he's basically said, I'm not doing it unless you bend over. And they promptly did. And you know what? Fair play to the guy. Like, you have a look at Kirk Cousins' career, and it's a guy who gambled on himself consistently in situations where quite often it fails, and he's made the absolute most of his career, monetarily, but also production-wise. Like, we bag on him. He is a upper good quarterback who's getting elite money, and he's only doing that because the teams he's been on have been cowards.
And I think I saw he's 232 million in career earnings now.
Guaranteed,
it's just.
Yeah.
It's fully guaranteed. Yeah. It's insane.
He's a healthy Sam Bradford. That's what someone called him.
And let's remember, they gave up a second round pick for Kellen Mond last year. So they invested high in a quarterback, and then they've just extended their current one. It's like Green Bay with Jordan Love. They drafted their quarterback of the future, and then they've kind of just forgotten he exists and the draft picks that went with it. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, Cousins, yeah, he's all right. We rag on, but his contract, it's just like he gets paid far, far too much money for what he gives you. Let's face it.
At the end of the day, when you have people like Tom Brady willing to depress their salary so that you can fit other people, really good prospects around you, and then you have someone like Kirk Cousins doing the exact opposite, Cousins is never going to win a ring because, if he wants to win a ring, he really needs to take some sort of, like, I've made my money, now I want to chase a ring, sort of 1 year, $5 million deal on a star-studded team and fit everything around him, because it's the only way it's going to happen. Like, you can't be paying someone that sort of money and expect to actually do anything, and that's what Green Bay is going to find out this year, because they've got a few pieces. They're going to have a lot less pieces. Their team is going to get worse compared to last year, and to that point, Zadarius Smith has been released by Green Bay, one half of the Smith brothers. They did re-sign Preston Smith to a new deal, however. They're really struggling, boys, aren't they? Because they've tagged the wide receiver Devontae Adams, who is going to refuse to play under the tag, and even under the new CBA conditions, which really restrict how long you can hold out, you can still do it under the prospect of the tag. So even though the tag for a second consecutive year is something like $20 million at wide receiver, Adams don't want it. And having a look at some of the wide receiver contracts being handed out, one of which we'll get to later, he could be looking to be the highest paid player, non-quarterback in the NFL, which at the moment I think is Hopkins, standing at $27.25 million a year. So he's going to be looking for about 30.
And that's only a 2-year extension on current money, so it's not technically a $27.5 million deal. That's just the new money that's been added onto Hopkins' contract. But I mean, this is the problem. Obviously, I admire Adams for taking this stance. This is the exact stance that Allen Robinson should have taken last year. And yes, I know I'm going to rag on him again, But he had the option to not sign his franchise tag, to say, I am not playing on it. Your move. He obviously didn't want to be there. The Bears obviously didn't really know what to do with him or want him there either. And yet they went through the motions and he just quit on his team last year. That's what I really, really don't like about it. At least Devontae Adams is saying, look, pay me or I ain't playing. He believes in himself. And Robinson should have done that last year, coming off 2 1,000-yard seasons, going, look, I ain't playing on this tag. You either tag and trade me or I don't play at all. Not just sign it, take all their money and not play. That's the huge issue I have with him. I don't want that kind of character on this team. But yeah, Green Bay screwing themselves going forward. They also released Billy Turner, who I'd like to see here in Detroit. Obviously, money may be an issue because he was on $7 million per annum there, but he's played right tackle very well for them. We need tackle depth because Will Holden ain't coming back. So, if we could figure out a deal with him, if we could lower it down maybe 3-4 million, something like that, he'd probably be one of the best depth tackles in the division. And we've already got one of the best depth centers in the division. I would like to see him here. I would like to see that deal be made if it was fiscally possible to do so.
I get Adams. If I was Devontae Adams and I saw them throwing money at Preston Smith and Devondre Campbell before trying to pay me, I'd be fuming. I'd be like, that's it. I'm just sitting out the season. He knows he's good enough and he's at that age where he can afford to sit a whole year just to make a point. Like I say, and you can find him for an point at camp. You can try to do whatever you want. He don't care. He'll take the money. He'll take the hits, whatever. Like I say, unless they give him $31 to $33 million a year, give him 3-4 year deal, he is not playing next year. Or he's not going to be a Packer. He'll be tagged. He'll be traded if he kicks up on much of a stink. So they have really backed themselves into a corner now where they're openly giving out deals to people while still negotiating with him, spending what he will see as his money that he's earned.
I mean, the thing is, you look at teams that say dole out everything in a trade for a guy that's got 1 year on his contract left. I'm thinking Jamal Adams specifically for this, but it happens all the time. You trade 2 first-round picks for a guy, and the guy goes, no, I want all the money, please. And they go, well, I'm not going to pay you. And it was like, well, you gave 2 first-round picks for me, so if you let me go, you're a fool. I want all your money, please. And it's like the Packers have kind of done that without trading for someone by having Rodgers and Adams and Jair Alexander, and then manufacturing it by actually getting good play from some of their lesser-known guys like Devondre Campbell. And, then they've got Adrian Amos is going to be a free agent after this coming season. And they've got other guys that they're going to need to pay. Preston Smith they've paid. It's like they've bent themselves over a barrel with literally everyone on their team. It's so funny how bad this team is going to be multiple years from now, because they're digging themselves into such a hole that they're going to have over $100 million of dead cap when this is all said and done in 1 year. It's going to be a disaster for them.
However, if they are able to get a deal with him, they are going to sweep the lot of us this year. Short-term gain, they will sweep all 3 teams this year, now that they've got Campbell and Douglas back. I hate to say it, but I think they're going to sweep us all if they bring him back. But like you say, down the line, in a couple of years' time, we are going to be laughing. And, it gives us the opportunity to topple the dynasty. They've ruled the NFC North for far too long. Our players should be looking at that going, right, we're the ones who are going to step up and displace them. And I'm looking forward to that. So, it's been a dodgy day in the NFC North altogether. I mean, the Bears managed to take the only guy on the Bengals defensive line who is not good at run blocking and paid him over 40 million. I think the guy graded at less than 50 for a run blocking last year, and that unit was elite. The lot of them, apart from the one guy they've taken, giving him 41 million, and he's not going to improve that run defense. He's not going to be better than Goldman was. And they've really overpaid for it. But they're like, oh, he played for the Bengals. He's good run defense. No, he's not. He really isn't.
Yeah, Larry Ogunjobi, who we were just about to mention, 3 years, $40.5 million, insane deal. So it's disaster all around in the NFC North, really. And I will take exception to the Green Bay comment. Through the first half of Game 17 of this year, with 80% of the Packers starters and 50% of the Lions starters, we beat them straight up. So I know that they sat some of their starters in the second half, but that first half had the majority of their starters playing, and we had more injuries than they had people sitting out. Our team is going to be better than last year's. Their team is still going to be worse, even with all these re-signings that they're doing, because you've got people like Robert Tonyan leaving, Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling leaving. Like, all of these guys are going to make a difference. At the end of the day, they are treading water trying to re-sign all of these guys. No Zadarius Smith. What happens if Preston Smith gets injured or Sean Gary gets injured? Their team is built like the Rams, but they're trying to balance on, I don't know, a balance board at the same time. You know, they're fucking wobbling all over the place. This team is setting up for a massive fall.
You might be right, but also the cap's going to be up to 250 million in 2 years, so they're hoping that that'll eat it up, and that's the way they're going. So I don't know. You hear the cap gymnastics going on these days. Anything is possible, but I certainly think we're in a good position where we are. We've got a lot of good young talent on our team. We're going to have a lot of money this time next year, even you know, because TJ is the only guy we have to extend now, and you can put him on a 5th-year option for 9 million. We're going to have a good amount of money next year to really make the splash plays when all the youngsters have another year under them. You know, Bears are going to struggle. They've got no draft picks this year. They've got a lot of money coming next year, but they've got a very old team. They've got to replace a lot of people. And they've only got about 14 players under contract for next year. So that 120 million is going to vanish very quickly when you're trying to fill your roster out. So I like where we're at just in terms of the build at the minute. And I like that we've just not gone crazy. It would have been easy to make that splash signing, but as we said during the free agency thing, you have to find the value. And right now, we've found the value. You know, none of these deals we've made threaten us long term, but they offer a lot of upside for us, and we've played it just right.
Yeah, I like where we're at too. I really do like how we played it. Couple more contracts just to mention that are of particular interest to us. The first one is just funny. Quarterback Mitchell Trubisky has been signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers to replace Ben Roethlisberger on a 2-year deal. The fuck?
I checked our schedule just to make sure we weren't playing them because I'm fed up of losing to that bum, and thankfully we're not. So, you know, what a fall from grace for the Steelers. They're used to having good quarterbacks, and there's the trouble with these dynasties. The Saints are finding this out. You have a dynasty for so long at quarterback, you forget what it's like without them. And it's nice to see them struggling. I kind of like it really when you've had such a good quarterback for so many years. You get really cocky, think, oh, everything's going well. It's not, and now you've got Mitch with you, and he's been sat a year, and he may get good, but he's in a bloody tough division with a lot of good pass rushers. It is not easy to get out of that division and to win in it. You know, even with Ben, even when he was his prime the last few years, when he was still pretty good, still a bloody tough division to win.
He's better than Mason Rudolph. That's all I can say. I genuinely think he is better. I think he gives them a better chance to win. But I wouldn't have gone 2 years. I'd have just given him a 1-year flyer because you know they're going to draft a quarterback. So why have you, let's say, I'm told you're in 2 years' time, you're making the backup. But I wouldn't have put my faith in him that long. I want to give him 2 years.
No, I mean, so I think it's quite interesting because I think that this team is set up quite well to actually what his skill set is. It suits a quarterback that's a bit more mobile than Ben, and obviously Ben's a statue, but the O-line's okay, and, you know, I think that Mitch actually is going to elevate that team. I think in terms of the first 3.5 quarters of play, Trubisky will be better than Roethlisberger was last year. Final 5 minutes? Maybe not. Roethlisberger's clutch, but we'll see what happens with that. It's just amusing to see someone actually pay him, which is just crazy to me.
I think, you know, the one for me is he the same style as Ben, really? Because there, in recent years, especially with the O-line not being the best, Ben's been throwing it in like 2.3 seconds or something like that. Mitch isn't the kind of guy who just gets it and throws it straight away. I don't know if he's got the instinct to throw it that quickly. I think he's going to need more time in the pocket there with them. Obviously, they've just signed up the right tackle today to a long-term deal who's been all right. They've got the left tackle in who's a young guy. I think they just obviously they really miss Pouncey there, and I think they need some guards. But he could be all right, but I don't think they'll run the Ben scheme there because I don't think he's that type of guy. He wasn't at Chicago.
So in Chicago, in his first year, when they actually had a lot of success, they ran quite a heavy RPO style offense, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, one-man reads, and just making a quick play like that. When they tried to open up the scheme, that's when he really struggled. So getting the ball quick out of his hands, I think, is something that he can do if you want to make the offense simple for him. So it depends whether the Steelers are willing to accept his limitations. I think if they do, I think it will be quite successful. I think people will be surprised because he's an accurate quarterback when you don't ask him to read the defense particularly much.
But the trouble is that offense hasn't worked the last few years for them. They were like we were. You know, you're throwing third down behind the sticks. That's how quick you're having to get it out if you're in third and long. You're not throwing beyond the sticks. And, you know, if you're doing the same way there, I don't think they're going to want that. I think they're going to want someone who will open up the playbook for them because they've had to limit themselves to what Ben's capable of the last few years. And you would figure they don't want a continuation of that.
Yeah. Right. Last deal to speak about is a guy that some people wanted in Detroit, but I'm mainly putting it in here, one, because of the scale of the deal, and two, because of what it might say about some of the other guys in this room that people want to bring in here. So specifically thinking about Allen Robinson's market, Christian Kirk, the wide receiver out of Arizona, has been signed by the Jacksonville Jaguars to a 4-year, $72 million deal, which could be worth up to as much as $84 million in incentives. Sorry, did I say Arizona? Did I mean is it Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona.
Yeah, it's Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a few beers in and I've completely forgotten where I am. Yeah, Arizona. So, I mean, $18 million on average makes him one of the most highly paid wide receivers in the NFL. If he achieves all of his incentives, he'll be third, in the NFL. I mean, I won't say any more than that. Your snap take, boys.
It's
ridiculous.
One of the biggest overpays in history. You know, even Bob Quinn wouldn't make that deal. You know, when you look at other deals that have happened today, like Gallup got 5 years, 55 million, something like that. And Gallup is infinitely better than what Kirk is. Yes, he just had the ACL injury, but for the value for money, it's exponentially better. And I don't know, it just feels like desperation from the Jags. They've spent a lot of money today. And in fairness, before that move, I thought they'd made some quite prudent moves. You got Brandon Scherf, who's gone in there. I think they've just signed Evan Ingram as well. Does well for them. Some good, solid moves. And then that happens. It kind of feels like, you know, he's very unpopular there, Trent Baalke, and he's going, right, I'm going to splash out big and hope people love me for it. Whereas people are like, what the hell are you doing? You're an idiot, just like we thought you were.
Yeah, but they just gave 40.5 million to that Atlanta linebacker that's very inexperienced as well. Like, they are just throwing money around for the sake of it, and it's going to come back to bite them in the ass. Kirk had something like just 400-yard games last year. Like I said, I will go all in. You will get more production out of Marvin Jones Jr. next year than you will Christian Kirk, and I will die on that hill. Like I say, he will never live up to this deal because he is one-dimensional. He wants to be a burner, but he doesn't have the rest of the skill set to me. So it's a huge overpay. And for me, like I said, this is just going to raise Robinson's just going to ask for more money. He's just going to say, well, look what they just gave Christian. I want more. So now that puts me totally off any receiver at all.
Yeah, the Jags have ruined free agency, especially for the wide receiver market. It's just, this is why Detroit should be quiet. And that's why I've been arguing with the person on Twitter. They're like, why are we not spending money? Why are we not spending money? This is why you're not spending money, because you're potentially going to put your future cap at risk by overpaying, you know, especially on the market now. If as much as I dislike Allen Robinson and his attitude, and I don't want him here for what you've got from him, if Christian Kirk's worth 21 million, he's worth 30. Easy. if you're doing it via comparison, and I'm not willing to spend that much money on a receiver, let alone one that's 29, that's coming off a down year, and I don't want to spend that. Same with Chark. Chark could potentially be good, but he's coming off a broken ankle. We're spending 20 million there, and again, not had a massive big breakout year as such. It's just, we've been prudent so far. We have gotten to this point. This time 12 months ago, if we'd have said we are where we are now, we'd have probably snatched, at the handoff that was offering that deal. Whereas we've got a squad full of very talented rookies. We've got very manageable contracts for vets. We've got a very good sort of, floor to build from. And we've done that through being prudent. We've not taken risks in free agency. We've kept the deals to a minimum. We might have spent a bit of money, but they're just 1-year deals. And you can't afford to put a contract out there like this. You just can't.
No. So I think Charles Davis in the YouTube chat has put it best. He says, the Jags had way too much money and very little brains. There's a saying that I think is very applicable here, which is a fool and his money are easily parted.
Well, that's the thing. All the Bears fans are going, we've got 120 million in free cap next year. Yeah. What do you think every NFL agent is going to do when you come knock him for his player? Oh, how much spare money have you got? All right, well, you'll pay us an extra 5, 6, 7 million for this guy. You can afford it. If not, we'll go elsewhere. You get held to ransom. And I'm guessing, especially in Jaquan's case, I reckon he's probably been held to ransom. The Falcons have probably made him a perfectly acceptable deal. And he's looked and he's gone, oh, yeah, but the Jags, they're offering me so much more money. The Jags have had to pay an extra $5-6 million a year for him, which suddenly makes the contract insanely expensive. And that is the problem free agency can provide for you. And the Jags have shown this. I think it's why the Colts haven't made any moves yet. The Colts have a ton of money, but they have about 70 million. But, Chris Ballard's a lot more prudent than Trent Balke is. So, you've got to be careful who you spend it on. And they're looking for a quarterback as well. So they'll get rinsed for a QB if they go for one. So, and I know they've been refused permission to talk to Watson, obviously, because it's an in-division trade. But they get rinsed through the floor with the amount of spare money they've got. So you have to be so careful.
Yeah, it's very true. It's an absolute minefield. In a capitalist society, everyone is out to beat you. Agents are out to beat you, players are out to beat you, other teams are out to beat you. Teams want to outdo your bad deals. And it's mad, isn't it? But the players you are getting at the absolute top of the market at this point. Every deal at this point is almost certainly not value for money.
Exactly. And this is why you have to build through the draft, because you negate the need for it. Then when you're dealing with your rookies, generally you'll get better value deals with them. You'll not have to pay out as much. You won't have to give up draft capital or whatever to bring them in to start with. You can't get held to ransom as much. So, that's why I like what we're doing our way. We're not leaving ourselves in a vulnerable position to the demands of players. And I'm assuming some of the ones who are going this year, we might have tried it on and it doesn't affect us. We just let them go. No harm, no foul to us. So, but it's been a fascinating day to see some of this. And
it's still coming out now. So Demarcus Lawrence has re-signed 3-year deal in Dallas. He's got 30 million guaranteed, but we don't know what the headline figure is on the contract as yet.
Andre got 40 million. Happy for him.
Yeah, he got the bag, and good for him. Because safeties don't often get paid that, and especially one with his injury at the end of last year.
No, another former Lion who got paid over 40 million today as well. Laken, Tomlinson. Oh,
there we go.
You just remember how bad he was with us, and you think, good God, how's he earning 40 million in this league now? I said earlier, I'd proper want Lee McNeil to just wreck him next year, just to and force him to say sorry for being bad for us.
Our special correspondent Ash has just come in saying it's 40 million overall for DeMarcus. So for an interior guy, that's quite a lot.
They were worried about losing him, though, weren't they? So I guess the one we didn't talk about was bloody Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. That's ridiculous. Yeah. When you're paying Zeke $20 million a year and you're letting Amari go for a 5th, I'd have made that deal. I don't care if it's 20 million Players like him don't come up for a fifth unless you're Bill O'Brien. So it's like you would have completely pulled the trigger on that and just figured out the cap gymnastics afterwards.
I mean, you don't need to do cap gymnastics. At the end of the day, that's going to be a valuable contract, especially when people are paying Mike Williams that sort of money. Sorry, but Cooper's much better. Just is. We've been going a long time, and I have been appealing for questions, but nothing else has really come to light. Is there anything you guys want to bring up before we head off?
No.
All right.
No, I think we've gone through most of it, really. I'm just looking forward to seeing what the rest of free agency brings, but I hope we stay as quiet as we have been, for now, anyhow.
All right. Well, there we go. This time next week is our next episode. It's going to be our linebacker prospect deep dive. So we're talking inside linebackers, outside linebackers, and the tweener guys who can do the 3-4 or 4-3 outside linebacker defensive end guys. So if we didn't cover them in the defensive line chat, but you want to have a look at some of those edge OLB guys, they're going to be in here too. Don't forget to look at that. Roar the Lions College Football Podcast is going to be coming at you shortly as well. What are you guys going to be discussing on the next one?
So, yeah, we're coming at you tomorrow because Ryan's off mosh pitting it on Wednesday, I believe. So, yeah, the College Football Podcast is going to be back tomorrow on the Tuesday. We have had a couple of weeks off, but we've just been recharging our batteries a little bit because this draft stuff is ever so taxing on time. But we're going to be looking, I believe, at the winners and losers of the Combine. I know we're going to have a look back on that. That finished last week. Now we've had a chance to get our thoughts and feelings on that. The Pro Day circuit is in full swing at the minute. I've not even had a chance to look at that today because I've been updating our Twitter with where the Lions have been. I know Arizona State's is today. I assume that's going to be later on. I assume it's not happened yet, but in Pacific time, right?
No, it'll be about 3 a.m., 2 or 3 a.m. probably.
Yeah, so we're going to go through that, and then we've got a few other bits in there for you as well. We'll obviously get to the draft chat. So if you've got any Lions draft questions or anything come in, we'll have a section just completely about the draft now because we're at that point. But we will be back tomorrow, so do come and join us and forgive us our few weeks off. We just needed a rest.
Yeah, I mean, we are gearing up to the big event now, so no wonder you guys have needed a little rest because it's all going to amp up from here. Just remains to talk about our socials. Roar the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Some variant of ROTL_UK for that. Facebook group for worldwide fans is Detroit Lions fans UK One Pride Worldwide. The website is roarthelionsuk.com. We actually do have an article just waiting to drop about what moves we might make in free agency. It was speculated by one of our new writers. That should be dropping probably this evening, so do check out for that. I don't think anything's been proved wrong so far, so that's really good news. A few other articles in there about who we should take it to. Hint, it's Kyle Hamilton, how Brad Holmes did last year. A few more articles are going to be dropping as well. Otherwise, just remains to me to thank my co-hosts, to Ryan, to Ant, Tom earlier on. Cheers, boys. We'll see you next week. And thank you to everyone for watching at home. Let's go, Lions. One Pride.
One Pride.
One Pride.